Chapter 106. Acting Too Radically Bonus. The instant the heavy curtain was yanked aside, the stinging reek of disinfectant rushed out, thick with the iron tang of blood. Inside the largest medical tent on the AIM front, the air was strung taut, like a bow drawn to its limit. Ragged breathing, stifled groans from the wounded, the crisp clatter of medical tools, all of it was drowned out by the sudden crescendo of an argument at the center of the tent. Tsunade. What a fine student you've raised. Danzo, shrouded in his eternally somber robes, stood rooted in the middle of the tent, eyes so dark they seemed to weep dampness. He glared at the figure beside a mound of blood-soaked bandages and empty medicine bottles. An entire village. An entire Kusagaker. Wiped out because that Kamiyama Ryo lost his temper. Do you have any idea what that means? They were allies. Allies named in our treaty. His voice was low but forked like a viper's tongue, every word an accusation. Tsunade, is this what you call discipline? Is this the ethics your clan instills, slaughtering an ally on a whim? Her reply was a sharper crack. Tsunade's head snapped up from a stack of casualty reports. Under her golden bangs, amber eyes flared with tangible fury, an enraged lioness. Shimura Danzo. Her fist slammed onto the desk. The thick hardwood groaned in protest. My people, I know them. Ryo isn't a lunatic, and he's no butcher. Watch your mouth. She leaned forward, pressure meeting pressure, her presence cutting even fiercer than his. And you parade around preaching hardline and iron-blooded, dressing yourself up as Konoha's shield. What now? Faced with decisive force, you suddenly think my man is too radical. Danzo's brow creased, the furrows digging deeper. Sparring with this woman's sharp tongue was a fool's errand. He changed angles at once. Fine. Let's set the grass village aside, for now. He pressed harder, voice turning colder. Has Ryo's squad completed its mission? Where is he? Where is the mission scroll, the intel? Has he forgotten the basic protocol of reporting back to the village? Does Konoha mean nothing to him? I'd say he slaughtered so freely in the land of grass he's forgotten his roots. Perhaps he's already nurturing thoughts of desertion. No one was better than Danzo at pinning labels. He dropped the heavy cap of suspected defection without blinking. Hey. Tsunade let out a short, incredulous laugh. You've been sitting in Root's shadows so long, looking down at the world, you've forgotten what it means for ordinary shinobi to stake their lives on the battlefield. She rose, both hands flattening the desk as she loomed over him. Missions run into complications and get delayed. That's normal. If you've got the free time to stand here lecturing me, dripping sarcasm and acting coy, why don't you take a walk among the wounded? Look at those kids who lost legs and arms. Look at the ones who bled and sweated for your glory. Her anger mounted, voice erupting like a volcano. I don't have time for your droning, old man. Get back to your command post and do your job. Stop making a mess of mine. No wonder my granduncle chose Hiruzen-sensei for Hokage back then and not you, because you weren't up to it. Those last words were a shout, each syllable laced with scorn and rage, barbed like poisoned senbon, striking Danzo's most sensitive nerve. His face went from iron blue to pitch black. The fire in his single eye all but burst out, then stuck, caught in his throat. His Adam's apple bobbed. He trembled with barely controlled fury, a breath trapped painfully in his chest. Get out. Tsunade jabbed a finger at the curtain, her command as merciless as a general berating a routed army. Danzo's chest heaved. It took all his strength not to lash out. He stared at Tsunade, eyes thick with venom, and squeezed out a threat between his teeth. Tsunade. Mark my words. This debt. Oh. A cold killing edge cut the air, interrupting him without warning. Mark what, exactly? The voice was not loud, yet it struck through the heavy atmosphere with perfect clarity. In the tent's shadowed corner, space rippled like water. A tall, straight figure tore the air and stepped out of nothing. Short black hair, slightly disheveled. Ryo. He simply stood there, not even bothering to look at Danzo directly. Yet an intangible, domineering pressure flooded the room. It was pure slaughter, so pure that even Danzo, who reveled in intrigue and darkness, felt a chill. Danzo's breath hitched. He whirled and met Ryo's gaze, serene to the point of horror, fathomless. There was no provocation, no anger, only a detached appraisal, the way one might look at an inanimate object. HMPH. Danzo forced a snort. He didn't dare hold Ryo's eyes for long, wary of being crushed again by that dreadful aura. Kamiyama Ryo. I expect a full, detailed mission report. You had better have truly completed your task. He left the line like a threat, but didn't risk another glance at Ryo or Tsunade. He turned and left in hurried steps, back stiff, an exit that looked, no matter how one squinted at it, like a clumsy attempt to hide his retreat. The heavy curtain fell back, cutting off that hateful presence. The air in the tent instantly loosened, the earlier gunpowder haze carried away by a faint breeze. The chill in Ryo's aura receded like a tide. Seeing Tsunade still fuming, chest rising and falling, he let his mouth curl into a relaxed arc and teased lightly, "Hey. As expected of you, crazy woman. A few lines and you almost made that fossil pass out." Ha! Tsunade flung a roll of medical reports at him. He caught it without effort. Impudent brat. She shot him a glare, then her eyes flicked over him, sharpening as her brows knotted. "Get over here. Look at yourself. Your clothes are in tatters. You're covered in wounds, the blood hasn't even dried. At this rate, the day you die somewhere with no corpse left to find, I won't be surprised." Her words were harsh, but the worry beneath them was plain. She strode over and seized his arm, hard enough to make Ryo grit his teeth. Her examination was quick and professional. Fingers pressed his shoulders, arms, chest, abdomen. Amber eyes were unyielding, with a thread of worry buried deep. "You ran into a real monster, didn't you? Which blind bastard did this to you?" An old monster, all right." Ryo let her fuss over him. Around Tsunade, the tension he lived in eased without him noticing. Here, he didn't have to force the facade of cold strength. Maybe because she had seen him at his worst, raw and ragged beneath the white glare of the infirmary lamps, any mask felt pointless. Kakuzu. A bounty-hunting freak, rumor has it he once tried to assassinate the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. "What? Assassinate my grandpa?" Tsunade's hands froze. She looked up, disbelief curdling into a cold, mocking smile. "Him. Kakuzu." She snorted. "Please. He probably lobbed a kunai from miles away and called it a successful attack on the god of shinobi." In her mind, the world's strong divided neatly into two categories, Senju Hashirama and everyone else. The gap was an abyss. All right. Ryo rolled the shoulder she had been manipulating, signaling her to stop. "These are flesh wounds. I'm not dying today. No need to trouble you, Tsunade-sensei. A few rounds of grilled meat and I'll be fine." He trusted his own recovery. Unless it was venom that ate to the core, like that time when rescuing Tsunade's team, or an injury draining his life itself, this kind of damage was routine. "As you wish." Tsunade snatched her hands back with a huff and reached for cotton and disinfectant. Still, she kept needling him. "And how many times have I told you, don't call me Tsunade-sensei. I don't have a headache like you for a student." She glared again, a flicker of awkwardness darting under the surface. "Funny how you remember the word sensei when you're in trouble. When you're fine, it's crazy woman this and crazy woman that. I see right through you, only respectful when you need something." Ryo chuckled, understanding. Whatever makes you happy. He knew her well. This contrariness was just her crooked way of caring. He dropped the matter of address and got straight to the point. "During the mission in Kusa, I met someone." Chapter 107, Dearest Nabekage. Tsunade arched a brow, motioning for him to go on. "A little girl of the Uzumaki clan. The only survivor." Ryo's voice sank, his eyes hardening. "Her name is Kaori. She's from Kushina's people, same bloodline. I have to bring her to Konoha. If Kushina finds out, she'll be over the moon. It's just," he paused and looked at Tsunade. "You know how the village's hidebound rules are. A newcomer, especially an Uzumaki child, won't escape interrogations and gossip. I need you, as Konoha's princess, to stand with her publicly and vouch for her. That will shut a few high-ranking mouths." He laid out his core request plainly, without hiding the reason he had gone on a killing spree. As for Kitsuchi, that big gift bag, Ryo already had a plan. Dumping the mess on a certain insidious old man was perfect. Danzo was, after all, a professional scapegoat. Seeing the unshakable resolve in Ryo's eyes, especially at the mention of Kushina's kin, Tsunade's gaze flickered. She lifted her teacup, took a sip, and muttered in a tone that seemed unchanged yet slightly off, "HMPH, no wonder the grass ended up like that, turns out." She left the sentence hanging. Even she didn't notice the faint, almost imperceptible sour note at the end. Was it because he had risked himself so much for another woman's kin? Of course. Tsunade instantly swept away that wisp of awkwardness and slapped the table hard enough to rattle the papers. When it came to the Uzumaki, the Senju's ally for generations, duty surged to the fore. She spoke without hesitation. "Uzumaki business is Tsunade's business. Leave the little girl to me. We'll see who dares breathe a word." Her declaration brimmed with protective ferocity, the responsibility carved into her bones. That's enough. Thanks. Relief finally tugged a smile at Ryo's lips. With Tsunade backing her, the biggest barrier to Kaori finding footing in Konoha was as good as cleared. The next instant, his afterimage thinned and vanished. The air only trembled with the faintest ripple of space. Hey! Wait! You brat! Tsunade froze, eyes widening at the spot where Ryo had disappeared, realization dawning a beat late. Hold on, how did he get in here? A key question, one she had overlooked, surged to the front of her mind. She had been fuming at Danzo, then distracted by Ryo's injuries, never stopping to consider how he had appeared in the medical office without a sound. The Flying Thunder God. The answer was obvious. Don't tell me, Tsunade's face shifted through several shades. As a top-tier medical ninja, her sensitivity to the body and chakra was second to none. She stopped what she was doing and ran her chakra through herself from crown to toes, an internal sweep for any foreign imprint of a spacetime technique. The feeling was awful. Having a spatial coordinate left on you without your knowledge, for someone of her level, was like having your front door flung wide open. Her expression turned complicated. Shock, a flash of irritation, and something deeper she couldn't name. Where was the mark? When had he said it? That audacious little. Before she could put the pieces together, space at the center of the room rippled again, like a stone dropped into a lake. Ah! Ryo appeared once more. This time, he wasn't alone. He had brought 4 attachments. Big sis. A young, energetic voice rang out first. Nawaki spotted Tsunade behind the desk and shouted like thunder. But Tsunade, still reeling from the discovery of the FTG mark and still probing for its exact location, wasn't wearing a pleasant face. Startled by her gloomy look, Nawaki hunched his neck. His voice shrank to nothing as he clamped his mouth shut. At Ryo's side stood a frail little girl dressed in Makoto's clothes. Her light red hair was dull, like withered grass. Her small face was smudged with dirt, but her large, clear eyes brimmed with unease. Uzumaki Kaori. Instinctively, she edged behind Ryo, clutching the bloody hem of his clothes like a castaway clinging to the only piece of driftwood. The instant Tsunade's gaze left Nawaki and fell on Kaori, all the anger, gloom, and complicated feelings melted like frost beneath the sun. Her eyes grew infinitely gentle, full of kinship and the empathy of one clan's ally for another's orphan. She circled the desk, crouched down to meet Kaori at eye level, and let a bright, warm smile blossom across her face. You must be Kaori. Her voice softened until it was barely a ripple, as if a louder word might startle a trembling bird. I'm Tsunade. From now on, I'm your big sister. Here, no one will bully you again. She extended her hand, but didn't touch, keeping a distance that felt safe. Come on, call me big sis. Kaori lifted her head, glanced nervously at this powerful, warm woman, then looked to Ryo, eyes clear and trusting, asking silently. Ryo gave her a steady, encouraging look and nodded. Go on, Kaori. It's all right. This is your sister Tsunade. She'll protect you. With his reassurance, the taut lines of Kaori's face loosened a little. Staring at the beautiful, strong, golden-haired sister before her, she mustered all her courage, opened her mouth, and called out in a thin, hopeful voice, Big sis. Tsunade answered at once, her smile dazzling as sunshine. Her natural social grace surged forth. She took Kaori's small, almost skin and bones hand without a trace of distaste. What cold hands. Hungry, aren't you? I'll take you for grilled meat in a bit, eat till you're full. And this hair, as she spoke, she pulled out a handkerchief and gently wiped the dirt from Kaori's face, movements as delicate as if handling a priceless treasure. We'll take good care of you. Soon your hair will be prettier than mine. In a few soft lines, the skittish little girl, though still shy, had eased noticeably. Her tiny hand quietly closed around Tsunade's warm fingers in return. Nawaki and Makoto watched the tender scene with quiet curiosity. Only then, having soothed the little one, did Tsunade seem to remember something. Her eyes cut sharply to the last item Ryo had brought back, the one he had casually dumped on the floor, Trust-Titan unconscious. The man was tall, but now bruised blue and purple. His earth-yellow outfit was a mess, at least a dozen wounds still seeping with the coppery scent of blood and dust. What's this one story? Tsunade straightened, nudging the lump with the tip of her sandal, brows knitting again. The features looked familiar, but beaten so badly she couldn't place him at a glance. Nawaki, whose earlier interruption had been shut down, finally seized the chance to perform. Sis, I know. He puffed out his chest, face alight with excitement and irrepressible pride, pointing at the man on the ground. This guy's a big fish. You'll freak when you hear, he's Shut it, idiot. Tsunade shot her brother a glare. His rashness left her speechless. She knew exactly where Naoki's ceiling was. No big fish of this caliber would be bagged by a genin like him. Her gaze snapped to Ryo like lightning. You little menace, who is he? Where'd you get him? Don't you dare play dumb, another prisoner you picked up while stirring trouble outside. Ryo shrugged, unmoved by Naoki's bluster. A bargaining chip with some value. Inconvenient to kill, so I brought him in. Time to let Danzo carry a pot. He didn't hide his intention. He's an Iwa Jonin, Kitsuchi. To be precise, he's the son of the Tsuchikage, Onoki. He dropped the bomb flatly, then added, he needs to stay alive, and in presentable condition. Patch him up with your medical ninjutsu so he doesn't die. A living Onoki's son is worth something. Tsunade's impatient expression froze. Iwanin. Onoki's son. This fish weighed far more than she had expected, practically dynamite fishing. She had to reassess just how big a splash this not my student of hers had made outside. The Tsuchikage's son. Even with all she had weathered, her pupils pinched tight. She understood instantly why Ryo didn't want to kill him, and why he would use him as leverage. Kill him, and it's a blood feud with a whole village. But alive, the value skyrockets, not just intel, but a strategic bargaining chip. Her look toward Ryo turned complicated. This kid had guts the size of the sky, and he never missed a chance to profit, even tossing the blame neatly onto Danzo on the way. She drew a deep breath. Their relationship had always been more like peers. Now, seeing his calculation and daring, trust rose easily to the surface. Tsunade met Ryo's eyes and said crisply, got it. Handle it your way. She believed in his judgment and ability, and knew how to coordinate the aftermath. That was Ryo, always pulling off the unexpected that still made perfect sense. She didn't press further. Turning to the unconscious Kitsuchi, she squatted with practiced ease. Gentle green chakra blossomed over her hands and flowed into his most serious wounds. For the legendary medic of the Sanin, stabilizing this level of trauma was trivial. Soon, she withdrew her chakra. Kitsuchi remained battered and out cold, but his life was no longer in danger. He wouldn't die from his injuries anytime soon. Done. He'll live, Tsunade said, flicking her hands. Thanks. Ryo nodded, hoisted the still unconscious Kitsuchi like a sack, and slung him over his shoulder. I'll go report the mission to a certain champion of hardline foreign policy, he said with a crooked smile, clearly meaning Danzo. Before the words had fully settled, Ryo and his gift bag vanished with a ripple. Silence fell over the office. Naoki opened his mouth as if to speak, then scratched his head at the empty space where Ryo had been. Makoto stood quietly to the side, her gaze soft on Kaori. Tsunade, meanwhile, had already laced her fingers through Kaori's, a broad, protective grin back on her face. Come on, Kaori. First a bath and clean clothes, then sisters taking you out for a big meal of grilled meat. Chapter 108. Toughest Posture, Most Cowardly Words Bonus. Konoha Command Post, Aim Front. Heavy black clouds sagged low. Rain drummed endlessly on the window frames, a suffocating, ceaseless hiss. Inside the command post, oil lamps barely gnawed back pockets of shadow. The air reeked of chill damp, blood, and scheming. On the wall, a vast shinobi world map showed Konoha's marker, isolated over the land of rain. Danzo sat at the main seat, his face darker than the sky outside. Before him lay a mission report scroll, stained with blood and grit, like a red-hot brand searing his nerves. HMPH. A throttled grunt broke the dead air. In the shadow behind him, two root operatives tensed, then froze back into stone. So, those spineless reeds of Kusagaku were acting for those stone-headed Iwa fools, sweeping the land of grass to collect Uzumaki remnants as vessels. His palm slammed the hardwood desk. Bang! The crack boomed through the cramped room. A teacup jumped, brown tea sloshed out, spreading a dark blot across a dry scroll. A palm print sank into the wood, fibers crushed shallowly by the blow. In the shadows, the two root shinobi barely dared breathe. Kusagaku, a fairweather ally, a creeper squirming in the ninja world's cracks. And they dared. They dared not only to secretly help their sworn rivals in Iwagakure piece together a perfect Jinchuriki, Uzumaki with powerful sealing physiques, but to meddle 100 different ways besides. Even Iwa's brutes had caught the scent, and yet Danzo, and the root intel web he had painstakingly woven, had been deaf and blind. Useless. All of you are useless. His fury nearly blew the top off his skull. He wasn't angry over a few Uzumaki lives. He already knew about the girl Ryo's squad brought back, Kaori, and felt not a ripple. To Konoha, stray Uzumaki out in the world were fallen leaves, one more, one less, no matter. What set his blood boiling was Kusagaku's vile conduct, betrayal to the bone, and the insult of being toyed with in the palm of their hand. Some ally this is. Worse than a naked enemy. More infuriating. More humiliating. Iwa, and what right did they have? Danzo's withered fingers dug grooves into the wood, nails packed with sawdust. Freedom from tailed beast rampages and Jinchuriki meltdowns had long been Konoha's strategic edge, thanks to Uzumaki Mito. While other villages wrestled their monsters, Konoha enjoyed a rare stability. And now, those damned grass and rock shinobi dared covet that stability guarded by Uzumaki blood. They dared raise a new Uzumaki Jinchuriki to break the balance. A direct challenge to Konoha's core interests, and a slap at Danzo's grip. A cold, absolute plan formed, hard as steel, in his mind. Those Uzumaki remnants scattered in grass, either they obediently get protected back to Konoha by root. Konoha's current helm rests with Danzo and the other elders, sheltering a few more Uzumaki won't rock the boat, the clan's sealing arts and heritage already sit in Konoha's pocket. Or, if they can't be taken, then erase them. Cleanly. Completely. What Konoha cannot have must not fall to wolves with hungry eyes, least of all into the hands of the great villages. For a flash he even thought, if not for the first Jinchuriki, old Uzumaki Mito, that ancient terror before whom even the third bowed, being gone now. Stray Uzumaki. Ryo, Danzo's eye slid back to the blood-stained report, his mouth twisting into an ugly arc that mixed approval with greed. Setting aside the boy's untamable, uncontrollable defiance, judging only this extermination of grass. Beautifully done. He all but ground the words out. Betrayers like grass, worse than pigs and dogs, tumors. They should be culled to the last. Purged as justice. This brat fit Root's palate perfectly, ruthless, leaving no tails, decisive in killing, unafraid to bear the weight. Born for Root. The itch to poach flared again. Kamiyama Ryo, why so stubborn? He'd hand the boy Root's number 2 seat if asked, authority, resources, the lot. The more he read the clean, crisp report, the more a stone sat on his chest, satisfied yet stifled. The little bastard simply wouldn't bend, wouldn't join Root, leaving Danzo little to pick at. The suffocation gnawed him raw. Ryo seemed to read his thoughts, a faint smile at his lips. He stood straight before Danzo, without the least trace of a subordinate's humility, composed, even faintly oppressive. Danzo-sama, Ryo jerked his chin toward a corner of the command room, where a trussed, man-shaped bundle oozed the copper of blood and the stink of earth, a faint Iwaninya breath. By protocol, this gift should be brought back to Hiruzen. But if you'd like to interrogate him now, I've no objection. His tone was casual, as if discussing a trinket. Danzo's lone eye lit like a starving wolf sighting lamb. Interrogate. Of course, now. Root could pry 3 pounds of intel from a corpse. Handing a high-value captive, even half-dead, to the decaying Anbu under Hiruzen would be a waste. You have my thanks for capturing him. Danzo forced his excitement down, trying to keep the elder's gravitas. He flicked his hand, voice low. Take him. 2 Root shinobi slid from the dark like ghosts, precise and cold, dragging the captive away and leaving a dark red smear on the rug. Efficient, Ryo said lightly, while laughing inwardly. Danzo, my dear scapegoat, so eager to take delivery. When Hiruzen asks why I erased grass, I'll sell you out, your orders, of course. You're the Nabekage himself, what's one more lid on the stack? Watching his men vanish with the prize, Danzo's irritation over Ryo's refusal to join was rinsed by this happy surprise. He turned back, a calculating glint in his eye. A spear like this ought to belong, to Root. Kamiyama Ryo, Danzo's tone picked up an imperious edge as he tapped a new spot on the map, well done. There's a more urgent mission here. Your squad will depart at once. That's enough, Danzo-sama. Ryo cut him off. The room froze. The 2 Root shinobi who had melted back into the shadows rippled with the faintest, incredulous stir. Someone dared talk to Danzo like that. Even a lowly clerk in the corner, tasked with passing documents, fumbled and almost dropped his files, face bleaching white. Ryo ignored them. My mission was to confirm Iwagaku's movements. It's done. I'm returning to Konoha for rest. For the time being, spare me further assignments. Not a request, notice. Insolence. Danzo erupted, the volcano unstoppered. The earlier stifling report and now this public challenge to his authority combined into a roaring blaze. His face went so dark it dripped. His eyes flashed icy spikes at Ryo. Kamiyama Ryo. Remember your place. You're a chunin on Konoha's rolls, a shinobi at war. His voice cracked with frozen rage and iron command. When did it become your turn to decide for me, or for the village? Issuing orders is my duty. Obedience is yours. He slammed the desk again, even harder. The oil flame jittered wildly. Look sharp. This is the AIM theater. I am the commander. When I assign a mission, you execute, immediately. He meant to squeeze Ryo, yes, but more than that, he would not tolerate any dent in his absolute authority. Ryo's stance was his face being ground across the floor. No face. Why couldn't this be said in private? Why humiliate me before everyone? My place. Ryo's eyes narrowed. His features showed not a flicker of fear. Instead, a dangerous curve tugged his mouth as a terrible pressure rose off him like a tide. In an instant, the command post seemed to warp. Lamplight stuttered. Scrolls rattled. Killing intent howled through like a gale, draining the room of air. A root agent in the dark grunted, veins standing at his temple, knuckles bone-white on his kunai. The clerk sagged into a corner, knees gone. Danzo, foremost in the blast, felt an invisible hand clamp his throat. The cold pierced his root will. His heart nearly seized. Frost stabbed up his spine to the skull. In that pure, crushing murderous will, the reflex to strike back died. Ryo stepped forward. The pressure doubled. Looking down at Danzo's shifting face, he spoke, each word crisp as ice falling and shattering. Danzo-sama, listen carefully, what I said was a notification, not a request. His eyes held no warmth. Understand. 1 second. 2. 3. Just when everyone thought the infamous, iron-fisted head of Root would explode into mutual destruction. HRNH, 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 a strangled, bestial chuckle scraped out of Danzo's throat, dry as a grinding wheel. With extreme difficulty, reluctant to the point of farce, he forced words through his teeth, each one tasting of blood. You, do well, Kamiyama Ryo. Then, mustering all his strength, he straightened his back to show what he imagined was his most unyielding, indisputable posture. But what came out of his mouth made every confidant present drop their jaw. Be careful, on your way back. He strained to make it sound stern, like a warning or command. I will, immediately sign your transfer for rest and return to the village. Now get out. Hardest stance. Most cowardly words. The contrast hit like a slap, equal parts absurd and painful to watch. Chapter 109. Don't hit him. The killing intent around Ryo receded in an instant as if it had never existed, leaving only a wrecked room and the hammering heartbeats of everyone present. His playful smile returned, tinged with a mocking curl at the corner of his mouth, as though he had just finished an amusing game. Much obliged, Danzo-sama. He tipped a hand in a lazy salute, so casual it bordered on insolent, then turned toward the command post door. His footsteps rang unnaturally clear in the hollow, dead-still room. Just as his hand touched the warped, squeaking wood, the one already stamped with Danzo's palm print and veined with cracks, Ryo seemed to remember something entertaining and paused. His voice, carrying an unmistakable mischievous bite, cut cleanly through the silence and rolled across the room. Oh, right. Almost forgot one thing. Ryo tilted his head slightly, expression all harmless innocence, and all kinds of infuriating, his gaze pinning the still stiff Danzo. A friendly reminder, that little gift your men dragged away, his name's a touch on the long side. Danzo's heart seized. A cold premonition coiled around him like a venomous snake. Ryo enunciated, slow and clear, each syllable a trigger wire. His name is Kitsuchi. He deliberately paused, savoring the way Danzo's pupil shrank to a pinprick, the blood draining from that weathered face until shock and fear twisted it into something corpse-pale. Oh. Ryo drew out the sound, feigning sudden realization. You might not remember it that way. He has a louder title. Iwagakure's third Tsuchikage, Onoki of both scales' only living son. Boom. The name detonated in Danzo's mind like a real paper bomb. His vision went black for a beat. Kitsuchi. Onoki's sole heir. Ryo saw everything he had hoped to see. Danzo's sullen, iron-blue face turned chalk white, then ashen. Wrinkles jerked like a thawing mask. Tisk tisk. What a performance, Ryo crowed inwardly. All right, now I'm done. Satisfied, Ryo lifted a hand in farewell. He ignored the petrified head of Root behind him, and the two elite operatives likewise stunned, breathing ragged at the thunderclap revelation. As if nothing had happened, he slipped out through the battered door. See you, Danzo-sama. His easy farewell still echoed in the door's crack when his silhouette vanished into the rain. For a breath, silence, tomb deep. Then a ragged shriek, warped by boundless fury, humiliation, and naked panic, erupted from Danzo's throat, so sharp and wild the rafters seemed to vibrate and the plaster flaked from the walls. Ka, mi, ya, ma, Ryo. The table's oil flame whipped and nearly died. Danzo went berserk. He kicked the hardwood desk. It flipped with a crash. Scrolls, cups, ink, maps avalanched to the floor, shattering. Tea and ink, mingled with the corridor's wet dog reek of rain, spread across the boards. Damn you! Damn you! May you die screaming. He swung his fists, breath tearing in his chest. But the rage lasted only 3 seconds before ice water terror doused him to the bone. Wait, wait. Where is he? Where's that Iwanan just now? Kitsuchi. Where is Kitsuchi? Lightning struck. Danzo whirled, bloodshot eye drilling the two root Jonin still stunned into statues, his face a mask of panic he had never shown in his life. Where is he? Speak. Where did they drag Kitsuchi? His voice shook. The two snapped back to themselves. One swallowed hard. Reporting, Danzo-sama, per standard procedure, he should have been sent straight to the temporary underground interrogation. Interrogation. The word burned his nerves like a brand. He nearly leapt. You fools, who told them to start? Root's efficiency was legendary. Its interrogation tempo, bone-deep reflex. From the moment they had hauled the man away to now, more than enough time for Root, with their habitual severity, to run a full first pass on a critically wounded but high-value, high-profile captive. Stand down. Call them off, now. Danzo howled, bolting toward the direction he had just sent the gift, blind panic flooding his eyes. He dashed like a scorched, half-plucked old duck. Danzo-sama. Wait, Kitsuchi. I know who he is. Stop them. Don't cut him. Don't hit him. Don't force drugs into him. Damn idiots, move faster or we're all dead. Danzo's frantic, broken bellow ricocheted down the corridor, leaving behind a wrecked room, en route shinobi wide-eyed, slack-jawed, utterly at a loss. The command post dissolved into utter chaos. Chapter 110. Don't poke me. Raindrops drummed tirelessly on the canvas roof of the medical tent, a dull thup-thup-thup that never stopped. The air was thick with disinfectant, a hint of blood, and the earthy tang of scorched soil softened by humidity. A single lantern cast a warm, dim glow over the tent's interior. Hiss. Ouch. Easy, easy. You're killing the great sage here. The scream that followed was so sharp and dramatic it nearly lifted the entire tent. It was the kind of howl that made you wonder whether you had walked into an infirmary or an execution ground. Ryo, who had just reached the entrance, paused mid-step. His lips twitched. That voice was unmistakable. Only one loudmouthed idiot in all of Konoha could sound like that. Jiraiya. Hey. Sounds lively, Ryo muttered under his breath, pulling back the heavy, blood and alcohol-scented curtain with a flick of his wrist. The light inside was dim but enough to reveal everything, and even for someone like Ryo, who had seen battlefields drenched in gore, the scene made his brow twitch. In the center bed lay Jiraiya, barrel-chested, his usually powerful muscles drawn tight as cables from pain. Veins bulged on his forehead, sweat streaked down his face, his expression twisted like a man being flayed alive. The cause was clear, a wickedly shaped kunai embedded deep under his right ribs near his lung. The exposed skin around it was a ghastly black-purple, oozing pus and blood that stank of iron and rot. That was no simple stab wound. The kunai was coated with a venom that ate flesh before the eye. Without the medical team around him, Jiraiya would have been long dead on the road back. Two young medical nin hovered over him, drenched in sweat. One held a gleaming scalpel and a compact chakra scalpel, its blade humming faintly, meant for cutting away necrotic tissue while cauterizing the wound. His trembling hands worked inch by inch, carefully trimming the blackened flesh. Each slice drew a fresh scream that could rattle bones. Og. I'm gonna die. Kid, don't shake your hand. Aim first. OWWW. My precious ribs. I think you just poked my kidney. Overseeing the operation was Tsunade, arms folded, lazily leaning against the medical cabinet. Her long golden hair was loosely tied back. Her beautiful face carried not the slightest trace of concern. Instead, she was smiling, that serene, dangerous kind of smile that said you asked for this. Her emerald eyes gleamed with amusement and the satisfaction of vengeance well served. Steadier, Morino, Chiaki, Tsunade instructed, voice clear and commanding. This is a routine debridement. Make sure every bit of dead tissue is gone. Leave nothing. Any residue will spread the poison faster. As for the patient's howling, she flicked an unimpressed glance at the convulsing Jiraiya, treated as background music. Why yes, Tsunade-sama. The two young medics chorused, voices trembling. Their hands were slick with sweat. This was Jiraiya they were cutting, one of Konoha's legendary Sannin. Normally, Tsunade herself would handle such a case in minutes. But now she was just standing there, watching. Which could mean only one thing, she was furious. And this was punishment. No anesthetic. No mercy. Pure, clinical revenge. Ryo's eyes flicked around the tent, then he understood everything in an instant. Oh, this idiot definitely did something stupid again. And it must have been spectacularly stupid. Otherwise, Tsunade would have fixed him up in 5 minutes flat. Now she was letting two rookies slice him open under her supervision, just to let him scream his soul out. A perfect example of using medicine to deliver justice. TCH. A textbook case of self-inflicted suffering. Even Ryo had to admit, it was a tragic sight, the great Jiraiya of the Sannin, reduced to a squealing hog under the trembling hands of two terrified medics. What's this performance called? Ryo finally asked, stepping inside, his tone calm, cutting through the cacophony of screams. Tsunade turned her head slightly, emerald eyes bright with mischief, tone almost innocent. Oh, Ryo, you're back. Nothing serious here. Just this idiot, she nodded toward Jiraiya, who said he thought he was dying and wanted one last wish before passing on. Something about a goodbye kiss to soothe his fragile little heart. PFF'd. One of the medics snorted before hurriedly bowing his head over the wound again. Between groans, Jiraiya gasped, to set a kiss full of emotion. A kiss of love to drive away death. Tsunade. Hhhhh. His voice cracked into a scream as the chakra scalpel brushed a nerve. Tsunade ignored him. She looked at Ryo and explained in the clinical tone of a professor giving a lecture. As you can see, this is a classic case of neurotoxic damage, poison invading the bloodstream, impairing the brain's ability to process dignity and self-awareness. Normal treatment can't fix that. So. Her smile brightened. I've devised a special, anesthesia-free deep stimulation therapy. Intense physical stimulus reactivates the nervous system, speeds circulation, and promotes detoxification. And see. It's working beautifully. His sensitivity to pain is excellent. His nerves are quite active. Ryo. There were no words. None. Just twitching veins. Tsunade, this isn't treatment. It's torture dressed up in medical jargon, he thought. Out loud, he managed, deadpan, truly, an impressive effort on your part. Stop, Tsunade. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Jiraiya suddenly wailed, desperation surging through him. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have asked you to check my abs while bandaging me. I shouldn't have said the scar looked like the mark of love. Ancestors. Great ancestors. Make them stop. You do it. You cut me instead. Just kill me quick. He was sobbing. Whether from regret or pain, no one could tell. HMPH. Tsunade gave an elegant snort, not even sparing him a glance. She turned to the petrified medics and raised her chin slightly. What are you staring at? Continue. If this rattles you, how will you handle real battlefield trauma? Practice is the best teacher, and he's the perfect live specimen. Don't worry, I'll take responsibility if he dies. Her confidence radiated regal authority. The two medics visibly relaxed, newfound determination burning in their eyes. If Lady Tsunade was here, nothing could go wrong. Morino inhaled deeply, steadied his hands, and brought the chakra scalpel back down toward the blackened flesh. A faint shhhk, the sound of burning, and the stench of seared skin filled the air. Ah. Tsunade, you devil woman. Personal vengeance. I'll haunt you. Ah. Jiraiya's howl rose another octave, thrashing so violently it took both assistants to pin him down. Ryo stood there, entirely unsympathetic. He sighed, finally cutting in, his calm voice slicing through the chaos. I'll be heading back to the village for a while. Chapter 111. Teach the Flying Thunder God. Oh. Tsunade arched a brow, interest peaked at last, her attention finally peeling away from Jiraiya's lovely accompaniment. Heading back. That old fox Danzo, actually willing to let a heavy hitter like you leave the front. Surprise colored her tone, with the faintest flicker of envy. Heaven knew how long it had been since she had touched dice or breathed in the sweet copper stink of a gambling den. Her hands itched. Then she looked at Ryo and sighed inwardly. Likely that old rat Danzo had been persuaded by this brat, by some means or other. The method felt familiar. Although no, in her case it was pure strength and fists. Ryo's method was, well, probably fists too. Tsunade wisely stopped overthinking it. Jiraiya, wheezing like a busted bellows but with radar-sharp ears, jerked his head up, eyes gleaming. Be back to the village. Ryo, do me a favor. He mustered what he thought was his most sincere expression. Look at me, I'm not moving for a while. Since you're going back, could you take the little bit of merit I've got and go to the old man, Hiruzen, and, get something approved? He licked his cracked lips, leaning into the words, a greasy sparkle of you know what I mean flashing across his face. It's that one. The space jutsu. The flying thunder god. Coolest thing ever. The kid's talent is the real deal. If you've got time, maybe toss him a pointer or two. Heh heh. Silence fell in the tent for a few beats. Tsunade folded her arms, rolling her beautiful eyes so hard they nearly flipped skyward. This guy was asking a favor like he was doing them one. Ryo's gaze was steady, almost bored. He dropped 2 words, crisp and clean. I refuse. He glanced at Jiraiya, eyes as calm and distant as a deep pool. Your disciple, what's that got to do with me? Close to me. Namikaze Minato. Just a classmate, nothing more. Can't help, and don't want to. That's it. What? You agreed. That's a weso, huh? You said, refuse. Jiraiya's pain-addled brain finally caught up. The smile of expectation hadn't even fully opened on his face before it collapsed. He looked like he had been made to swallow a fly, shocked, awkward, and aggrieved. Reflexively, he looked to Tsunade for rescue. HMPH. Tsunade shot him a monumental eye roll, chin tilting higher. What are you thinking? He's your disciple. And who is Ryo, Konoha Academy's babysitter? Besides, he's a chunin. Ever heard of permissions and protocol? She didn't spare him an ounce of face. Helping Minato petition for enshrank technique was one thing. Asking Ryo to personally tutor him in the Flying Thunder God. The man's brain was definitely poisoned. But, Jiraiya mumbled, crushed under pain and disappointment both, isn't it? I mean, Ryo already mastered the Flying Thunder God, right? I figured, with Minato's talent. He kept fishing, but his voice had gone small. He had never imagined Ryo would refuse so cleanly, without an inch of give. Naoki, who had been happily spectating, scratched the back of his head. Soft-hearted, he stepped in to spare Jiraiya further embarrassment. Jiraiya, don't worry. When I see Hiruzen-sama, I'll bring up Minato. Should be fine. Jiraiya seized the lifeline at once, shifting expressions like a seasoned actor. In a weighty, elder-beseeching tone, he said, Naoki. Then I'm counting on you. Tell the old man, see if they can make an exception and let Minato redeem the Flying Thunder God. If not, other top-tier jutsu scrolls are fine. He's my most promising seedling. Konoha's future will have fire rests on him. Do me this favor and I'll owe you for life. I'll buy you the best drink. Show you the most majestic mountains and rivers of Konoha. He nearly blurted something he shouldn't. The cough covered it. Enough, Jiraiya. Keep yowling and your wound will split again. Shut up. Lie down. Tsunade snapped, finally bringing the farce to a halt. She turned to the 2 young medics, who looked ready to faint, and said briskly. Go rest. I'll take over. They fled with grateful bows. Tsunade's eyes slid back to Ryo, the message plain. Danzo might be settled for now, but paperwork couldn't leave handles for him to grab. His pettiness had no bottom. As for you, brat, her tone softened but kept its edge, you're not going back for nothing. There's a batch of severely wounded who must be transferred to Konoha for further treatment. You'll act as escort captain and deliver them safely to the village gates. I'll issue a formal mission order, no one will dare nitpick. She paused, eyes skimming Ryo's young, blade-sharp face, then flicking to the ink-black sky outside the tent. A thread of gravity shaded her voice. Bring back every single one. Got it. Ryo understood at once. This escort was an iron gate, a shield stamped with the seal of Konoha's princess and top medical commander. It temporarily folded all of Ryo's movements, up to and including anything he might do in Konoha, under Tsunade's direct task umbrella. Safeguard the lives of critically wounded comrades. An unassailable priority. It was a royal amulet draped over Ryo's shoulders, plugging any process loopholes. His return to the village was justified, compliant, airtight. Let Danzo scheme. First ask the tens of thousands on the front if they would accept undermining the medical commander's judgment on life and death. Ask Tsunade's seal if it agreed. Lay a finger on him, and you're spitting on every blood-soaked shinobi. Political correctness and strategic necessity, in the face of the princess's will and fists, were all hot air. That was a proper backer, quietly flattening every ambush path while chalking you up for merit. High-handed, protective, unreasonable, and it felt great. A glint of understanding flashed in Ryo's eyes. Tsunade's decisiveness, and her way of shielding her own, suited him perfectly. Fewer headaches for him. He didn't hesitate. He straightened and accepted with clear, ringing confidence, as though taking an honor rather than a burden. Understood. Mission accepted. I'll get it done. With Tsunade's golden shield, the road to Konoha would be clear. As for what came next, stirring up a little fun in the village, maybe leaving a surprise for certain people, the initiative was entirely his. Tap. Tsunade lifted her pen and swept her signature across a pre-prepared scroll in bold, flowing strokes. Chapter 112. Who is she? System, Ryo called silently within his consciousness. Since returning from Tsunade's camp, he had begun taking stock of the strength he had forged through months of blood and fire. Especially those two near-death battles. They had nearly cost him his life but greatly accelerated his fusion with power. Beep. Closing square bracket. Host status. Scan complete. Shanks legacy integration increased to 58.7%. Shanks legacy unlocked to 60%. Strength. Kage level. System evaluation. You already have 1 foot across the threshold of Kage. Closing square bracket. Staring at the panel in his mind, Ryo remained calm. That 58.7% fusion rate was earned through countless brushes with death. He knew that as he advanced further, the fusion speed would slow. His young body still needed time to grow and adapt to the immense power born from the template, like a dormant volcano brimming with energy but requiring time to solidify its foundation and widen its conduits. He scoffed at those Uchiha prodigies who reached Manchkyo-level strength at 13 by burning away their potential and lifespan for temporary power. That was no different from drinking poison to quench thirst. Ryo had boundless potential and vast room for growth. The path lay clearly ahead. He just needed to let his body mature naturally. In a year or two, when the time came, that 60% barrier would break smoothly. His armament haki would awaken, and his conqueror's haki would no longer be restrained by his youth. When that moment arrived, his power would undergo an earth-shaking transformation. For now, all he needed was patience, to wait for the tree of power to bear fruit. Outside the tent, the campfire crackled. The sound seemed to echo the rhythm of the power surging within him, deep, long, and filled with explosive potential. There was no conversation that night, only the silent declaration of strength. A few days passed, and under the surge of vitality, the last trace of Ryo's wounds vanished. The bandages were discarded carelessly. His exposed physique, sleek and solid, radiated explosive strength. He was ready to depart, accompanied by Makoto, Shiguru, and Kaori, heading back to Konohagakure. Captain Kamiyama Ryo of the Kamiyama unit. A Chunin's respectful silhouette appeared at the tent flap. His voice was filled with reverence. The heavy zone units are at the main gate, ready to relieve your command. Orders were absolute. Ryo grabbed his coat, washed white and scarred with cuts and burn marks, and put it on sharply. He stepped out of the tent, sunlight raining down like arrows, forcing his eyes to narrow. At the gate, the scene was grim. A dozen crude stretchers lined up, telling the brutal story of war in silence. Makoto and Shiguru were in the line, Shiguru checking bandages and Makoto soothing the injured. Kaori stood quietly at Ryo's side, her slender frame steady in the sunlight. On the stretchers lay faces pale as ash, chests faintly rising and falling, barely clinging to life. Severed limbs wrapped in cloth, empty pant legs flapping weakly. Blood seeped through bindings like stamps of despair. These were the severely wounded retrieved from the gates of death, personally confirmed by Tsunade. They had to be transported to Konoha's superior medical facilities to recover their ability to fight. The air was thick with the scent of medicine and infection, but there was still a faint trace of hope. Every exhausted, bloodshot gaze, some blank, some resolute, fixed on Ryo's approaching figure. He alone symbolized the backbone of the team. Shiguru, Makoto, and Kaori had become indispensable as well. Ryo's gaze cut across the line. No speeches, no extra words. He walked to the front, tall and composed, and calmly spoke 2 words, his voice steady yet filled with unshakable resolve. Let's go. Ryo led at the front, Kaori close by, with Makoto and Naoki guarding the wounded. His shadow stretched long across the ground, like a sword pointing home. With him leading, the group of wounded felt immovable. The return journey was long, cutting through the land of fire. Though calmer than the front lines, the name of Konohagakure alone deterred most threats. As for Danzo, a flash of mockery crossed Ryo's eyes. Between his own power, the order signed by Tsunade, and the will of Konoha's entire front line, who would dare lay a hand on them? Days and nights passed as they crossed rivers and mountains. Ryo walked at the front the entire time, his observation haki spreading silently like a vast web, covering kilometers. Every movement of the wind, every flutter of wings, every hidden hostility, none escaped him. A few wandering shinobi and bandits tried to watch from the shadows. The moment their gaze landed on Ryo, terror overwhelmed them. His presence alone crushed their courage. Without a word, they fled back into the dark. The journey continued without a single conflict. Eventually, the towering walls of Konoha appeared on the horizon, beyond the sea of trees. The sunset melted into gold, dyeing the sky a warm amber. The Hokage rock glowed like a god's face, majestic and peaceful. At last, the great gate of Konoha stood ahead, marked by its carved scroll patterns. The guards recognized the figure leading the convoy. Each stood straight, saluting. Fatigue, pain, and longing for home intertwined in everyone's hearts. Hope had never felt so real. Then, just as the stretchers were about to roll through the gate, a voice filled with longing and joy tore through the dusk like lightning. Ryo. A petite red-haired figure burst from the open gate like a runaway flame. Uzumaki Kushina. Her signature crimson hair streamed behind her in the sunlight. Her sky-blue eyes overflowed with joy and longing. Ever since learning from Hiruzen that Ryo was returning, she had waited every evening like a sentry. Girl's dignity. Jinchuriki identity. All forgotten in that instant. In her world, there was only one heart that mattered. Kushina slammed into Ryo's chest with full force, her slender yet strong arms locking around his waist like steel cables. The strength nearly crushed his ribs. The familiar scent of him filled her senses, dust, smoke, and the battlefield. It calmed the heart she had held in suspense for days. She buried her face in his chest, feeling the pounding of his heartbeat. Each thump reassured her that he was alive. She clung tightly, as if to make up for every lost moment in one embrace. After a long while, she reluctantly lifted her head, her tearful face glowing in the sunset. You big idiot. Why were you gone so long? Sniff. Her voice trembled, her complaint tinged with fear and the pain of almost losing him. Ryo, always tense and alert like a drawn blade, softened. The coldness in his eyes melted away. His hand rested gently on Kushina's red hair, fingers brushing through the soft strands. His voice was low and steady. Yes, I'm back. Those 3 words said everything. They were her comfort and his declaration of return from blood and fire. Time seemed to freeze for Kushina. Then she smiled, radiant under the golden light. She opened her mouth, ready to scold him affectionately for making her worry. But then, from the corner of her eye, she caught sight of a girl standing nearby, Kaori. A pale, fragile-looking girl, her face almost translucent. Her body looked as if a breeze could topple it. And that hair, bright, unmistakably red. The sunset poured over that hair, and in that instant, the color stabbed into Kushina's eyes. Red hair. The mark of the Uzumaki. Kaori stood frozen by the sudden reunion before her, her white eyes filled with fear and confusion. Her gaze met Kushina's, sapphire meeting glassy brown, and the world seemed to stop. Kushina's smile froze. A crack appeared on her expression as doubt rushed in like wildfire. Shock followed, then disbelief. Who is she? A survivor of the Uzumaki clan. That thought thundered in Kushina's trembling heart. Chapter 113. Makoto feels guilty. Who is she? A red-haired girl that young. Uzumaki, aside from Grandma Mito and me, how could there still be a survivor in Konoha? That thought, absurd yet electrifying, erupted in Kushina's chest like long-buried magma, exploding through the calm surface of her heart. Joy, shock, disbelief, and breathless confusion flooded her all at once. SSHE, Kushina's lips parted, her throat bobbed, but no full sound came. She jerked her head up toward Ryo, her lovely blue eyes filled with disbelief, searching for an answer she both wanted and feared. Ryo didn't keep her waiting. His steady voice, like a stabilizing anchor, broke through the silence. Nawaki, Makoto. At once, the frozen convoy started moving again. Right. Nawaki answered, spinning around and shouting at the escort shinobi. Come on, move it. Easy with the stretchers. Don't jostle our brothers. His loud voice shattered the awkward air. Makoto, quiet as a shadow, moved toward the wounded, her calm eyes scanning each stretcher. She nodded gently to the injured as if nothing had happened at all. Amid the bustle, Nawaki jogged over to Kaori. Seeing the girl's timid, startled look, he grinned. Hey, little one, don't be scared. We're home. His bright smile was clumsy but full of warmth. Ryo waited until the line was moving properly, then took Kaori's slightly cool hand and led her a step forward toward Kushina. The child instinctively leaned into him like a fledgling seeking shelter. Looking down at the bright red hair catching the sunset light, Ryo spoke calmly, as if confirming the truth. Uzumaki Kaori. Those simple words completed the final piece of the puzzle. Kushina's body trembled, her eyes instantly filled with tears as her composure collapsed. Uzumaki, she repeated the name, her voice shaking. Without hesitation, Kushina lunged forward, throwing her arms around the small girl and hugging her tightly. Kaori gave a soft yelp at the sudden embrace. Kaori. Kushina's voice cracked, and hot tears flooded down her face. I'm Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina. She repeated it again and again, as if etching her name into Kaori's heart. Kaori froze, overwhelmed. The hug was too warm, too full of a strange familiarity that melted her fear. Slowly, her own small arms wrapped around Kushina's neck, clinging back. Grief, loneliness, and a sudden rush of joy burst out of her as she sobbed uncontrollably. Awa, big sis. The two red-haired figures clung together, crying as one. Grief and joy intertwined into something wordless and immense. After the fall of their clan, this was blood calling to blood, a reunion across time and death itself. Ryo stood silently aside. Naoki scratched his head, glancing between the crying pair and Ryo's expressionless calm before grinning awkwardly. Makoto watched them too, her face serene in the sunset's light. Her lips were pressed together, but her hands, hidden inside her sleeves, had tightened unconsciously until her knuckles widened. At the end of the long road, Konoha's gates stood wide open, keeping the front line's darkness outside. The wounded were lifted and carried quickly through the gate into safety. When the last stretcher disappeared, the golden sunset washed over the towering doors, and the air smelled faintly of medicine and smoke fading away. Finally, Kushina released Kaori, trembling from the outburst of emotion. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Her red, tear-streaked eyes glistened under the light, full of relief and gratitude. She drew in a deep breath, still unsteady, then looked at Ryo with a heart overflowing. Ryo. Her voice trembled with heat. I don't even know how to thank you. Ryo met her burning gaze calmly. He lifted his hand naturally, brushing his thumb across her cheek to wipe the tears away. His touch was brief but sure, rough from battle yet strangely gentle. Kushina, his voice was low and clear, carrying the weight of a promise. I told you. His eyes were steady, certain. From now on, your business is my business. He paused, his tone turning firm. Between us, there's no need to say, thank you. The simple statement hit her heart like a hammer. Kushina's face flushed red, her voice caught in her throat before she finally managed a small nod. Her blue eyes locked on him, unable to look away, full of warmth and trust. A few meters away, Makoto stood still, quiet and unmoving. From the moment Ryo had touched Kushina's face, her gaze had lowered to the ground. The evening wind lifted her black hair as her expression stayed calm, almost too calm. But inside her sleeves, her hands trembled slightly, nails digging into her palms. In the end, the bitter thought circled in her chest. The brief moments at the aim front, the brushes of fingers, that near kiss, felt suddenly small and meaningless under Kushina's radiant affection. Ahem. Ahem. Naoki's exaggerated coughing broke through the heavy mood. Hey, you too. He put one hand on his hip, the other pointing toward the village. Shouldn't we handle the important stuff first? Ryo. The mission report. The wounded. And. He slapped his forehead dramatically. The third Hokage's waiting. Jiraiya told me 100 times. I still gotta talk to him about Minato's training and that flying thunder god. Ryo's eyes flicked toward Naoki, the calm of command returning in an instant. The single syllable was enough. His earlier softness vanished. He didn't linger with Kushina, only took Kaori's small hand firmly. I'm taking Kaori to see the third first. He looked at Kushina. You and Makoto catch up. Then he turned to Makoto, giving a short, distant nod. I'll find you later. With that, he led Kaori away. Kushina replied brightly. Watching Kaori walk beside him, she smiled, her expression soft and glowing. Go on. I'll talk with Makoto. Hey, Ryo. Wait up. Naoki chased after him, still talking nonstop. Jiraiya's mission, leave it to me. We gotta get flying thunder god for Minato. Soon, the group at the gate dispersed, leaving only the two girls, Kushina and Makoto. Kushina's excitement hadn't faded. She hooked her arm through Makoto's with a bright grin. Makoto. My bestie. She said eagerly, her voice brimming with joy and a hint of pride. Tell me, was Ryo as amazing on the front lines as he is now? I heard he got seriously hurt and Tsunade-sensei had to save him. You were there with him, right? You must know everything. Did he say he missed me or anything? Her big eyes sparkled with anticipation. Right now, Kushina's heart overflowed with gratitude for Makoto. Thank goodness Makoto had taken care of Ryo. She clutched her arm affectionately, waiting for the details. But that simple gesture felt like a whip against Makoto's already guilty conscience. The memory of her secret closeness with Ryo flashed like a blade. Kushina's bright smile stabbed deep into her heart, filling her with guilt. Her pulse quickened. Her fingers went cold. We were best friends, after all. Makoto forced a smile, her voice light but tense beneath the surface. Smoothly, she freed her arm from Kushina's hold, pretending to fix her hair as she turned her gaze toward the market. Kushina, she said with forced cheer, it's still early. I haven't had Konoha's three-color dango in forever. Those frontline rations were awful. Just thinking about soldier pills makes me sick. Let's grab some, okay. My treat. Without waiting for Kushina's answer, she strode ahead quickly. The sunset caught the edge of her violet skirt as the breeze lifted her hair. She took a deep breath as she walked, forcing her voice into a lively rhythm. Oh, and you should have seen Naoki back there. You won't believe what he did once during a raid. She launched into a story, hoping to drown out any talk about Ryo. Kushina followed along, still smiling but slightly puzzled. Something felt off. Makoto had pulled away too quickly. Her cheer sounded a little too forced. As the smell of dango drifted over from the market, the two girls' laughter mingled with the hum of the village. Yet beneath the light chatter, a faint, invisible tension began to stretch between them. For the first time, Kushina felt a small trace of confusion when looking at her best friend. The sisterly chat began, already tinged with unspoken unease. Chapter 114. The Good Guy. The door to the Hokage's office. Naoki drew a deep breath and pushed open the barrier that separated inside from out. The turning hinge groaned long and low, as if slicing apart two different worlds. The light inside the office was subdued. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, sat upright behind his broad desk. His crimson Hokage robe looked especially solemn under the slanted daylight streaming in. Scrolls covered the desktop like a sea of gray-yellow paper. In a shadowed corner, a faint presence lay coiled there, like a silent guard. Ryo stood at the very front. On his left was Kaori, so thin she looked like a gust of wind might carry her off. Kaori instinctively pinched the edge of Ryo's coat hem between her fingers until her small knuckles went white. Naoki followed half a step behind, lips pressed tight as he fought to steady his gaze. The brutal truths he had heard outside Kusagakure felt like red-hot needles stabbing through his mind. Hokage-sama. Ryo's voice was calm and even, cutting through the heavy air of the office. Kaori lowered her head even further. Her dark red hair hung in a disorderly fall over her narrow shoulders, like a flame beaten down by sudden rain. Hiruzen's gaze fell on Kaori with gentle scrutiny. Ryo caught the fleeting glint of calculation in his eyes, the look of someone faced with an unexpected matter he still had to treat with gravity. Ever since Tsunade's urgent scroll had landed on his desk, he had turned everything about this Uzumaki orphan over and over in his mind. If not for Tsunade personally staking her name with thunderous weight, a bloodline bearer of unknown background would have faced a far harsher intake. There would have been strict reviews, perhaps even a Yamanaka memory probe for a soul-level audit. Right then, Hiruzen's expression softened into the kind smile Naoki knew so well. That smile, born of long years, was his habitual stance when facing knots that could not be untangled quickly. Child, Hiruzen leaned forward slightly. His voice slowed and softened to a reassuring murmur. I am Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage of Konoha. The journey was hard. You have made it to the leaf, and... Before he finished, Naoki's eyelid twitched hard. He forced himself not to look away. Those cruel truths he had heard outside Kusagakure throbbed in his skull like heated needles. Knowing the high-level calculations back then, he barely kept from rolling his eyes. Nausea surged up from his gut, and he nearly retched. He bit down on the soft flesh inside his cheek until the taste of iron spread in his mouth. Do not lose it. At his side, his right hand slid down to his thigh. Through the cloth, his nails dug hard into his own flesh. The sharp pain crushed the boiling wave of rage. The hot-headed kid from before had changed after these months of blood and iron, at least enough to learn endurance. Hiruzen seemed not to notice Naoki's internal storm. He continued to Kaori, back then, when Uzushiogakure fell. He sighed, sorrow knitting his brows as if lamenting a dusty chapter of village history. Konoha was too late to aid you. The distance was great, enemy movements unclear. There were many concerns. A complicated shadow flickered deep in his eyes. And within those concerns back then, there had also been the expedient calculations of the village leadership, Udatane Kaharu, Mitokado Homura, Shimura Danzo, and himself. While Uzumaki Mito still lived and her prestige loomed large, they feared accepting the entire Uzumaki clan. A mighty shinobi clan whose potential rivaled Senju and Uchiha joining the leaf would mean restlessing the pie of power and resources, a burden to the balance the leadership clung to. Child, you have suffered. His tone held genuine regret, with a heavy weight. His fingers lifted slightly and, almost casually, pressed atop a somewhat worn scroll on the desk, a deep brown scroll soaked in a special solution, its head stamped with a bright red cross mark signifying urgency and confirmation. Beside it, bold strokes spelled out, Tsunade. With Tsunade's guarantee, many procedural steps can naturally be simplified, Hiruzen said, his voice steady as bedrock. The Uzumaki have always been Konoha's closest blood ally. Back then Konoha failed to reach out in time. Now. His gaze returned to Kaori. Child, Konoha is your home. Stay, learn, and live in peace. The leaf welcomes family who share our blood. His words had weight, and they reflected his measured judgment. Times had changed. Before him stood a lone, battered little girl. One Uzumaki could not overturn the heavens. For today's Konoha, taking in one more bloodline, even symbolically one more clan, was not a bad thing. It was a modest reinforcement. Home. The word touched Kaori. Her perpetually bowed head lifted a few millimeters. In the emptiness of her eyes, something faintly stirred, so subtle it was almost imperceptible. Ryo had remained silent. From the corner of his eye he took in Hiruzen's words and the heavy backing implied by Tsunade's scroll at the desk's edge. He knew well that Tsunade's name did not only smooth over harsh bloodline screenings that could shut anyone out, or even demand memory audits. It also smothered certain doubts born in the higher echelons, rooted in old, shadowed schemes. That scroll was a scepter. When Hiruzen gravely revisited delayed support and many concerns, a sliver of cold light flashed in Ryo's black eyes. Kusa's cowardly retreat, its leader's base ugliness, the scars carved into Kaori's flesh and bone, all of it mocked that pretext. The political grime behind those concerns was as murky as the guard's shadow in the corner. Ryo's face, however, showed no ripple. Tsunade's guarantee had opened the door. Hiruzen's present stance fell within expectations. Hokage-sama, Naoki's voice broke in, abrupt and tightly controlled, almost too urgent to suppress, cutting him off. Taking advantage of the Hokage's focus on the matter at hand, he stepped forward, body taut, desperate to throw out the promise he carried. Tsunade's scroll lay quiet at the desk edge, and the Hokage's attitude made the timing feel right. Jiraiya is badly wounded and cannot move, Naoki rattled off, afraid that if he were late by even a heartbeat he would drown in his emotions again. He asked me to spend all the merit points he has earned to redeem one Shrank forbidden technique, Flying Thunder God, created by my second granduncle, Senju Tobarama. He practically shouted it. For Namikaze Minato. Jiraiya said Minato has the talent. His eyes locked on Hiruzen. The air in the office went still for a heartbeat. Hiruzen's mild expression hit a snag at Naoki's sudden shout. Looking at Naoki's trainee's colded impatience, a barely visible twinge of helplessness crossed his eyes, part headache at Naoki's rashness, part awareness of the extra paperwork when Jiraiya tried to shortcut process. He tapped a finger softly on the desk, talk, a reminder and a moment to arrange his thoughts. Namikaze Minato, golden-haired, gifted, calm. Hiruzen knew the boy's talent. His growth benefited Konoha. Hiruzen slowly lifted his lids. His gaze paused on Ryo's steady face for a beat, then slid to Naoki's flushed cheeks. Jiraiya's merits are more than sufficient, he said, voice even, reassuring, and setting the tone. As for Minato. He nodded slightly. Apt and steady. Worth cultivating. Leaning back a little into the broad chair, his crimson robe fanned gently. I will make arrangements. The training grounds for Flying Thunder God, and the scroll, once Minato completes his current mission and returns to the village, preparations can begin. His gaze returned to Kaori. Good child, the Senju residence has been prepared. It is spacious, quiet, close to the academy, perfect for recuperation. If you need anything, find Naoki. His voice painted the plan for her with gentle certainty. Relief crashed through Naoki. The boulder on his chest fell away and he exhaled without meaning to. He could not help glancing at Ryo, eyes bright with mission accomplished. But the moment his gaze met Ryo's deep, unfathomable black eyes, that lightness froze. Naoki. Ryo's voice broke the brief silence, ringing clear. Naoki jolted and snapped to attention. Here. Ryo's glance lingered on him only a heartbeat before anchoring on Hiruzen. His tone was flat, rippleless. Hokage-sama has arranged matters well. Naoki, he shifted to direct instruction, take Kaori to settle in, get familiar with the place, and learn the routes. He placed a small weight on get familiar. I will finish reporting on the front, then meet you there. Naoki's heart tightened. Report. But he caught the hint in Ryo's eyes. He snapped back like he had received a formal order. Understood. He turned and crouched to meet Kaori's still rigid posture, pulling on a broad, sunny smile to pass along a sense of safety. Hey Kaori, with me. I will take you somewhere quiet and roomy to rest, 10,000 times better than those busted places you slept in at Kusa. Kaori's body gave a tiny shiver. She instinctively raised her head to look up at Ryo. Feeling her gaze, Ryo tilted his head and met her dark red eyes, fearful yet filled with fierce attachment. He extended a long-fingered hand. That wide palm, warm and steady, came to rest on her bowed head. He pressed down gently and firmly. The weight and warmth of his hand seemed to ease some unseen knot. Go, Ryo said. The voice was not loud, but it carried absolute assurance. Kaori drew a deep breath, like drawing courage. She gave the smallest nod. Her tiny hand, trembling, let loose one finger from the death grip on Ryo's hem and, very slowly and very carefully, touched the edge of Naoki's broad palm. She did not clasp it, only that fragile brush of contact. Naoki's smile turned more genuine. With utmost care he took the girl's cold, soft hand, as if cupping a frost-kissed tender leaf in need of sunlight. Let's go. His voice was featherlight and slow as he led her toward the heavy office door. Their footsteps creaked steadily on the polished wooden floor. Naoki deliberately slowed his pace to match Kaori's wavering, hollow steps. One step, two. They pushed open the door that symbolized power and responsibility. Sunlight spilled in from the corridor outside, spreading a small pool of brightness. Naoki bent slightly, guiding Kaori. A big and a small silhouette slipped slowly into that light. The door's weight drew it closed behind them without a sound. The last faint scrape of the hinge dissolved into the thick air. With the outside muffled, the office settled into a focused quiet. The massive desk stood like a border between village affairs. After the two disappeared, Hiruzen's gentleness thinned away like mist under sunlight, revealing the more customary layer beneath, thinking, solemn. The bright office light etched his features, the look of someone about to tackle major business with steady concentration. He did not immediately look at Ryo. His fingers tapped habitually on the heavy dossier by the dark characters, frontline situation outline, as if confirming the agenda ahead. All right, Hiruzen began, the warmth fading from his tone as it shifted to an official, even cadence. We can now speak about the front in detail. He lifted his eyes, level and direct, toward Ryo, the seriousness of a man who needs key information. Ryo, report the situation at the front, everything, in full. In the deepest corner of the room, where filing cabinets and a giant shinobi world map cast their partition of shadow, the guard's silhouette grew even more still as the atmosphere changed, like a stone statue plunged in water, ensuring these proceedings went undisturbed. That figure had taken in everything that just happened. Chapter 115-116. All thanks to him bonus. The heavy wooden door of the Hokage's office closed soundlessly behind Naoki and Kaori, shutting out the warm sunlight and the faint bustle outside. When the last faint scrape of the hinge faded, the air inside condensed at once. After watching Naoki lead Kaori away, Hiruzen sat straight behind the massive desk. The crimson Hokage robe that symbolized the peak of power gleamed darkly under the somber light. The gentle concern he had deliberately shown Kaori melted like snow in the sun, replaced by the calm scrutiny of a longtime leader handling core matters. He no longer looked at Ryo. His wrinkled yet steady fingers landed precisely on the edge of an open dossier, tapping twice on the bold inked title on the cover, AIM Frontline Briefing Outline. All right. Hiruzen's voice sounded steady, crisp, and directive, fully entering work mode. He raised his eyes, no longer looking at a junior, but like a general assessing a strategic weapon. His gaze locked directly and sharply on Ryo, who stood like a spear. We can focus on the front now. Ryo, Chunin, report everything you have, in full. The cold ink on scrolls cannot match the truth seen by living eyes. Ryo's voice was even. He recalled, and scenes of a megacure filled his mind, smoke and downpour. He did not ramble. He cut straight to the core, concise but precise. The three-way meat grinder has stabilized into a fixed state. He laid out the brutal slaughter at the front, Hanzo's predicament, Konoha's tug of war with Suna, Iwa's raids, and the failure in Root's intelligence network. He focused on the carnage at B7 and on how he tore open Iwa's encirclement to rescue the Sannin. Hiruzen listened in silence. He needed fresher, concrete information from eyes just returned from the furnace of flesh and blood. Soon, he had what he needed. It matched the reports on the scrolls closely, which steadied his heart. Every time he heard this staggering record, no matter how many times he had read it, the veteran Hokage still felt a jolt. He quietly picked up another sealed scroll at the corner of the desk, marked with the medical corps seal. It recorded the sudden incident during Ryo's mission in Kusagaku, the bloody battle against Kakuzu, strict and thorough. 2 severe injuries stacked. The ferocity and resilience of the red-haired boy before him were monstrous. 13 years old. The thorn labeled dangerous buried itself a little deeper in his mind. After thinking in silence for a while, Hiruzen leaned forward slightly. The topic turned, and the atmosphere tightened with the weight of a senior's earnest admonition, although the political calculation beneath it was obvious. As for the matter in the land of grass, Hiruzen's voice sank, his brows knitting. His fingers tapped lightly on the desk without thinking. Ryo, what you did was too extreme. However unworthy Kusagaku may be, they are nominally an ally of Konoha. Annihilating the entire village, the methods were excessively severe. The impact on Konoha's international reputation could be significant. We are a righteous army, a model among the 5 great nations. We must consider consequences and image, and mind our restraint. He emphasized his tone. There may have been filth within Kusagaku, but eradicating them root and branch, was that not too radical and heavy-handed? Konoha's shinobi must uphold Konoha's responsibility and bearing. The familiar talk of guarding one's image and political correctness. Routine. He knew it was time to throw out the scapegoat. A cold gleam of mockery flashed deep in Ryo's black eyes, though his face stayed impassive. Hokage-sama, please judge clearly. He spoke, and there was even a trace of barely perceptible, formal compliance. The annihilation of Kusagaku was not due to bloodlust. It was a wartime emergency order issued directly from the AIM front by Danzo-sama. His exact words were, traitors like those dogs from Kusa, a cancer, should be eradicated completely. Destroying them is the right purge. He pressed it as overall commander with a first-class wartime order. As a Konoha Chunin, orders are as a mountain. I did not dare disobey. He paused slightly. The mission scroll should have been submitted in duplicate by Danzo-sama. The directive content matches his consistent iron-blooded style. All I did was execute the order strictly. The blame was shifted cleanly and righteously. As expected. The instant the name Danzo was clearly spoken, Hiruzen's fingers froze on his beard. The earlier expression of heavy care for the village found a floodgate. In an instant, a mix of scapegoat in position, and habitual exasperation at that one's methods washed away the weight. Even the wrinkles on his face seemed to find a new way to relax, shifting from worried to the slightly reproving look of I knew it. As expected of him, Hiruzen's voice rose a touch, carrying a helpless sternness that said this is no surprise. The righteous lecture he had aimed at Ryo switched targets seamlessly to Root's absent leader. Danzo. Too extreme. Too rigid. Always mired in Root's methods. Strength and ironblood are not wrong, but there is a time and a place. He must consider the village's overall image and long-term interests. Does he see the rules I, the Hokage, set or not? Hiruzen launched into a long but very safe denunciation of Danzo. Every line seemed to help exonerate Ryo, implying that the atrocity was caused by a bad order. The subtext was plain. The main responsibility lies with the professional scapegoat, Danzo. My reprimand of him shows I understand your difficulties. Watching how practiced Hiruzen was at turning the spear toward Danzo, he felt the familiar dance take shape. He knew Hiruzen needed this blade to keep drinking blood on the AIM front, so he would not delve deeper now. He was also happy to let Danzo carry the name of excessive extremity. Hiruzen's glorious, righteous image was propped up by Danzo taking the blame in the shadows. Today's throw and catch went smoothly with tacit coordination. After a standard round of scolding Danzo, Hiruzen's tone lightened again. He looked back at Ryo with more gentleness and understanding, and a touch of satisfaction with his own scapegoat work. Enough. Since there was cause, I will speak with Danzo. Ryo, rest in the rear for now and recover. The front needs your strength, but remember to act with more caution. That final caution served as both reminder and as the final no-guilt verdict of today's talk. The stick was lifted high and put down lightly, without touching Ryo at all. When it came to taking the blame, Danzo was a professional. You could say Hiruzen's current glorious and righteous Hokage image relied on Danzo. Danzo. Still Danzo. Yes, Hokage-sama. Ryo inclined his head. Sitting through Hiruzen's moral lecture in the Hokage's office was more tedious than standing in the Wailing Gorge braving poison fog. Only one thought remained in his head. End this and leave. The mission was done, the blame shifted, and the rest order secured. Ryo spoke to take his leave at once, his voice steady and firm. If there are no further orders, I will withdraw. Kaori has just settled in and needs to be placed properly at the Senju residence. Go on. Hiruzen waved as a matter of course, the customary benevolent smile returning to his face. Ryo did not dawdle. He turned and left. As he pushed open the great wooden door, the unique bustle of Konoha's streets flooded in with the evening air. He did not pause, his destination clear, the Senju estate. Ryo's figure suddenly accelerated. He flashed between the shadows of buildings near the Hokage Tower and the street lamps just lighting, like a red bolt merging with the night wind, speeding straight toward the clan district. Chapter 117. Moving in starts with demolition bonus. Dusk melted to gold, bathing Konoha's shopping street in warm orange. Ryo had just escaped the stifling air of the Hokage Tower and walked headlong into Longmist, everyday bustle. Ryo. Kushina's voice went off like kindling catching flame, bursting over the market noise. Her hair, a blaze of red in the sunset, shone brilliantly. Her smile was bright as she waved hard. Makoto stood beside her. A little farther back were Naoki, fresh from the Senju residence, and Kaori, clinging nervously to the hem of his jacket. Group dinner. We have to have a group dinner. Kushina hopped over in 2 quick bounds, her blue eyes shining with the joy of reunion and the natural righteousness of her tone. To celebrate you making it back safe, and to celebrate that I have new family. She snuck a quick glance at Kaori. The girl ducked her head even lower. Naoki grinned wide. Perfect timing. Ryo, you haven't lost your touch, right? I'm about to hurl if I eat one more ration pill. Makoto stood half a step behind Kushina. The curve of her lips was just right as she chimed in softly, yes. It's been a while since we tasted Ryo's cooking. Kaori said nothing, only scrunched Naoki's coat hem tighter in her small hand. Ryo's gaze swept over them, and, thinking of his long-neglected, war-worn place, he made a quick decision. Let's go, Ryo nodded, intent clear. Buy ingredients. We will cook at home. Turning into a familiar lane, Ryo hesitated for the first time. The house before him was a brand-new, 3-story courtyard home, white walls and dark tiles, standing quiet in the twilight, nothing like the weathered, time-worn place in his memory. The faintest crease of confusion had just touched his brow when the little tomato beside him popped it like a bubble. Well, how is it? Kushina hopped up the stone steps, hands on hips. Her red hair danced in the breeze. Excitement, plus a touch of credit due, was written all over her face. That shabby little place of yours totally wronged me. How are we supposed to live there? I had the crew tear it all down and rebuild. From now on, this is our home. Her voice grew smaller as she spoke, a blush climbing her cheeks. She hurried to add, the Senju compound is too big and too empty. It just makes me think of Grandma Mito. I'm not staying there alone. Living off her. The phrase flickered through Ryo's mind, then washed away beneath something stronger. Not bad. The corner of Ryo's mouth ticked up, rare as sunrise. He pushed open the freshly lacquered door. Behind him came Naoki's odd clucking and Kushina's triumphant hum. Makoto's eyes touched the new lintel and slipped away at once, calm as a still pond. Only the fingers holding the grocery bag tightened, just a little. In the brightly lit kitchen, Ryo was in his element. Steel flashed tame in his hands. Under precise, forceful cuts, ingredients surrendered into neat cubes and shreds. The spatula flew, flames licked the wok, and oil smoke detonated into a domineering fragrance. Smells amazing. Naoki plastered himself to the doorway, sniffed hard, and crowed, Ryo, if you don't open a restaurant, it's a crime. Kushina busied herself laying out bowls and chopsticks, movements a touch clumsier and sweeter than usual. She kept sneaking looks at the tall, focused silhouette in the kitchen, the corners of her mouth tipping up. Big sis, Kaori sat at the table, still a little stiff. Kushina put her bowl down at once, sat beside her, slipped an arm around her shoulders, and started whispering little stories from the day's shopping, doing her best to let the girl relax. Naoki poured tea with his usual, big-hearted clatter. Makoto sat on Kaori's other side, quietly helping arrange the tableware. Her motions were as elegant as ever, but her eyes were a shade unfocused. Whenever they skimmed across Kushina's cloudless smile, or that intent figure in the kitchen, they flicked away as though from heat. The lively air wrapped around her, yet felt separated by an invisible screen. Under the table, her hands rested on her knees, fingers faintly curled, never fully at ease. Dishes stacked quickly, layer on layer. Warm light, good food, familiar young friends, and a brand new, blood-related little red-haired sister. Laughter and Naoki's clowning filled the new house. He brought up Minato's flying thunder god. Makoto answered with a polite, fitting smile. Kushina never stopped piling food into Ryo's and Kaori's bowls, like a songbird who had finished her nest and was perfectly content. The smell of smoke and blood seemed chased clean away by this simple dinner. But the warmth did not last to the end. When the table lay a battlefield of plates and night had deepened, Naoki wiped his mouth and stood. All right, Kaori, time for home and rest. Eat up, get strong, and next time we'll empty your brother Ryo's pantry. Kaori looked instinctively to Kushina, then anxiously to Ryo. Kushina's smile froze for a heartbeat, then she nodded hard. Right. Go with Naoki tonight. We will see each other tomorrow. Ryo gave a small nod, acknowledging Konoha's unspoken rule. Newly found Uzumaki, for now, would live under Senju care and village protection rather than move in immediately. Naoki took Kaori's hand with an easy grin. Don't worry, I've got her. See you, Ryo. I'll come by tomorrow. He swept out, Kaori looking back with every other step. The quiet click of the closing door seemed to draw off a layer of noise from the room. Makoto rose as well, her movements smooth, as if rehearsed 100 times. Kushina, Ryokan, it's getting late. I should be going. Her voice was gentle as always, her face showing the right measure of happiness for her friend and the little sister who had found a home. Only when she turned to Ryo, when their eyes touched, did the perfect smile ripple, like a pebble breaking a lake's surface. A heartbeat later, it was still again. Careful on the way, Makoto. Kushina waved, oblivious, warm as ever. Thank you for the meal. Makoto dipped her head. As she turned out the door, her spine seemed even straighter. Cool night wind flowed in. The door closed softly behind her with a click, sealing the last of the light within, and perhaps shutting out that tiny, magnified loss in her eyes. Moonlight spilled like quicksilver outside, cold as frost. In the new-built house, only two remained. The space that had been merry a moment before now held the small sounds of breath in the hush beyond the window. Kushina still wore her smile, but night had tinted it with a thin, transparent blush, spreading from her cheeks to the small curves of her ears. The heat that had pressed on her heart since his return, briefly buried by reunion, now surged like long-banked lava, bare and bright. Her hands and feet forgot themselves. The brisk housekeeper competence she had shown earlier had vanished without a trace. So, Kushina cleared her dry throat, trying to summon her usual breeziness, only for her voice to sink, laced, without her noticing, with a soft, kittenish quiver. The house, is it okay? Pushed them to finish fast, she cut off suddenly. Ryo stood a step behind her, silent. His broad, steady hand lifted without a word, carrying a warmth forged on the battlefield and a quiet, irresistible certainty, and came to rest lightly on her shoulder. A shiver like lightning ran from that touch through her whole body. Kushina's spine tightened like a sprung trap. Her heartbeat thundered like drums. The room's air turned thick and hot. On the fresh white walls, the light threw a single, gently swaying shadow, two figures, overlapping. Kushina. Ryo's low voice brushed her ear, roughened like stone on sand, yet strangely hot. He leaned in a fraction. His scent, smoke and sweat braided with the evening's street-side life, rose like an invisible tide and drowned her all at once. I'm back. About that reward we talked about. Chapter 118-119, Kushina's first kiss. The reward we agreed upon. His tone was direct and domineering, like a commander demanding his spoils of war. It wasn't a question. It was a command. The burning masculine aura surged around her, pressing down like a tidal wave. Kushina trembled. Reward. That word struck her heart like a red-hot stone thrown into a calm lake, instantly turning into thick steam. She could still remember the moment she had blurted it out earlier that day, eyes shining with excitement, making that impulsive promise. She instinctively turned slightly away, her lips parting and closing as if to speak. Maybe she wanted to say, the house is the reward, or maybe snap back with her usual, who owes you anything. But the words got stuck in her throat and only a soft, helpless whimper escaped. Before she could react, Ryo's hand on her shoulder delivered a powerful force. It wasn't rough. It was gentle but absolutely irresistible. She felt like a powerless feather caught in a storm. Her vision blurred as the world flipped. When her eyes focused again, his face was right in front of hers. Those eyes, trained to find the vital point in the chaos of battle, were now focused entirely on her. Reflected in the dark pupils were two small, panic-stricken versions of herself and the overhead light. But deeper inside, something else burned. A slow, consuming fire that belonged not to a hunter on the battlefield, but to someone who had finally cornered his only prey. Time lost all meaning. Kushina's mind went blank. Blood rushed to her face, burning with heat. She forgot to breathe, forgot to think, forgot the rebuilt house and the dinner that had just ended. All she saw was that face closing in, the fire in his eyes, and the overwhelming pressure threatening to melt her on the spot. Ryo leaned in. His movement was fast, precise, and full of silent control. Kushina instinctively shut her eyes, too shy to resist. The next second, a surge of heat branded her lips. It was like an exclusive ownership protocol being activated. Woo! Kushina froze in place, like being shocked by static electricity. Not painful, just enough to jolt her system. Her protest died in her throat like a rejected form in the medical department. Her nerves triggered an alert. Unfamiliar contact. A firm declaration of territory. The way he kissed wasn't soft or romantic. It was as if someone was slamming a cheap battering ram into a locked door. No subtlety, no grace. Just full-force occupation. She tried to resist. Her voice cracked. Her hands pushed against his chest, but her strength evaporated. Her fingers curled into his shirt. It was like trying to fight a virus with a right click. Shame, panic, and dizziness flooded her mind. Her body stopped responding. Her face flushed red, hotter than her normal chakra surge. Her breathing tangled with his, chaotic and fiery, like two programmers debugging bad code in a server room full of smoke. At the edge of a system crash, the pressure suddenly lifted. Finally, a pause. A system reset. A faint thread of warmth lingered between their lips, like a snapped data cable too short to reuse. Kushina's chest rose and fell violently, like the aftermath of a staged explosion. Her trembling eyelids refused to open. Her flushed skin spread from her face down to her collarbone. Her system was in overload. First kiss, hijacked. Success. Ryo's eyes narrowed. His finger gently traced her heated skin. His voice came out in a low murmur. Not up to standard. His tone scratched at her nerves like sandpaper. Without sparing her another look, he turned toward the bathroom. His tall back looked like armor heading into the next battlefield. The faint pressure in the room didn't fade. If anything, it left behind a message. This night was just getting started. Wash up and sleep. Kushina stood still. A full 30 seconds passed before she felt her limbs again. His scent still clung to the air, mingling with the residual heat. She raised her hand to her lips, which still tingled from the contact. That bastard, she muttered, her voice low and shaky. It didn't sound like anger. It sounded more like a soft complaint. Her heart was pounding like it had just run a marathon. He said, wash up and sleep. The warmth she had barely calmed flared up again. She stomped hard and walked quickly toward the other bathroom. Her thoughts were spinning from the kiss. Just taking a shower felt like running a mission. Thinking about what came after was enough to make her head smoke. Soon, the sound of running water echoed from both bathrooms. Hot water eased the tension in her body, temporarily cooling the invisible heat in the air. When she came out in her pajamas, the scent of shampoo clinging to her skin, she opened her door quietly. There was a new scent inside. It wasn't hers. It was Ryo's. Clean, masculine, mixed with a faint hint of battlefield steel and dried pine. And on her pink bed, full of her own scent, Ryo was lying there. He hadn't even bothered to cover himself. Just laying on top of the bed with only dark pajama pants, his upper body bare under the warm yellow light. His muscles looked like sculpted bronze, hardened by countless battles. His hands rested behind his head. Eyes closed. Breathing calm. But she knew he wasn't asleep. She could feel the pressure in the air. And the slight curve of his lips. The heat she'd just suppressed flared up again. Kushina stood in the doorway, frozen, fingers twisting the hem of her pajamas. Her face was red enough to drip blood. The battlefield terror, the red-haired witch of Konoha, now stood frozen in her own home. Standing there to guard the door. Ryo's voice broke the silence. Get in bed. Sleep. Kushina bit her lower lip. She took a deep breath and walked over. Each step felt like she was walking a tightrope. Her palms were sweating. Ryo, she said softly, her voice trembling. He opened his eyes at last. Under the soft light, there was no battlefield sharpness in them. Just slow, burning heat, like lava under still water. He patted the inner side of the bed. The message was clear. Get in. Kushina closed her eyes and pulled the blanket back. She slipped under the covers like a rabbit hiding in a hole. Her body curled tightly to the edge, back to him, holding her breath. Turn over. The low command came again. Slightly impatient. She didn't move. Her spine stiffened. She tried to inch even closer to the edge. A sudden force pulled her back. Ah! She cried out, startled. He flipped her over like she weighed nothing and pulled her into his chest. His arm wrapped around her waist, firm and inescapable. She was crushed against him, his heat seeping into every inch of her skin. Kushina looked up, flustered, her voice caught between anger and embarrassment. He didn't stop. The next second, his grip tightened around her waist. Kushina felt like she'd touched a live wire. Her unspoken protest was deleted before it even finished loading. Her voice glitched. Her hands, meant to push him away, tapped his chest once before giving up. She sagged into him. All her resistance protocols failed. Her system overheated. Her breathing tangled with his. Right as her brain screamed low oxygen warning and her joints gave out with a creak, the pressure finally released. A faint shimmer of heat remained on her waist, like leftover coolant on metal. Kushina gasped for breath. Her chest rose and fell irregularly. Her eyes blurred from the heat. Her face was so red it looked like an emergency light. Her body went still, entering a state of temporary energy-saving mode. Ryo's gaze scanned her calmly. His finger lightly touched the hot skin on her waist. His voice was low. Quality needs improvement. Chapter 120. Love is restraint. Kushina lay deeply sunk into the soft pillow, her messy red hair clinging to her cheeks, mingling with tears that had yet to dry. She stared blankly at the warm halo of yellow light on the ceiling, like a traveler drifting beyond the starlight. A silent ripple still echoed deep in her body. Every subtle tremor recorded the impact of the emotional storm that had just passed. Something had been stirred deeply within her. It felt as though the core of her heart had been gently brushed, leaving behind a lingering imprint. The cool air finally reached her feet, which dangled off the edge of the bed. Her skin remained faintly flushed from exertion. Ryo slowly lifted his head. His thick red hair fell over his temples. He pushed himself up, scanning her dazed expression. His gaze paused at her slightly open collar. The curve of her collarbone peeked through. Then Kushina felt a gentle force wrap around her. That solid, warm figure moved in again. His presence was undeniable as he drew her into a broad embrace. His arms, strong as steel, wrapped around her waist. One hand moved behind her damp neck, supporting her head. His wrist pressed lightly against her temple, grounding her in place with overwhelming sensory and psychological weight. His warmth surrounded her completely, filled with the distinct scent of masculinity. His chest pressed firmly against her back. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat, even through the thin fabric between them, crashed into her chaotic pulse, creating a tangled rhythm. A fierce, almost suffocating emotional wave surged toward her. Stronger than any scent. Heavier than any storm. Kushina froze. Her breath caught. His embrace felt like it would crush her, and her already scattered thoughts fuzzed further. But at the peak of that tension, a strange sense of absolute safety flooded through her like warmth into cold limbs. The shock coursing through her body slowly faded. Ryo. Her lips parted slightly as she called his name. Her voice was hoarse and trembling, filled with a fragile dependence. Like someone reaching out from the edge of a cliff. Sleep. Held tightly in his unyielding arms, her back pressed against the defined muscles of his chest. The thin fabric did nothing to dull her awareness of the energy resting beneath his skin. Her faint struggle was locked down instantly. His presence was a weight pressing against her, immovable and certain. Panic gripped her. She froze in his hold. But, she stammered, her voice trembling as she tried to lean slightly forward to ease the pressure. But the arm around her waist didn't budge. Instead, the movement triggered more pressure, embedding the tension deeper into her nerves. Her tiny motion sparked something. Ryo let out a low growl. The sound came from deep in his throat, like a wounded beast. His arm tensed. Muscles bulged. Veins rose under bronzed skin. A heavy, invisible force poured from him, thick like storm clouds. The chakra under his skin surged violently, sealed only by pure willpower. That hum at the nape of her neck felt like molten lava pressed behind a wall of iron. Every flicker of unease from her only deepened that pressure. The slightest crack could cause the dam to shatter. Don't move. His voice was low and rough. Kushina's thoughts collapsed. She stiffened in his grip, breath shallow and nearly cut off. She could feel his chest rise and fall, his muscles tensed beyond the limit. It was a storm restrained on a knife's edge. A volcano held in silence. One breath too many, and it would break. Agony. That was what Ryo felt. The scent of her skin. The warmth of her curves. Every tremble she made. Each one tore through his nerves like flames licking through dry leaves. The pain felt like it had been distilled from every battle he had ever survived. A scream echoed in his soul. Silent and desperate. Control. He had to keep control. No. He couldn't allow this. The girl in his arms was too fragile. Too young. Like a flower blooming in the early morning dew. He could feel her body tense, her chakra unsteady. In the depths of her soul, she was still untouched. Love is restraint. That truth settled like a mountain. Cold and immovable. Binding him tighter than chains. Even if it cut into his bones, it couldn't be loosened. Giving in would be too easy. But protecting her, even from himself, was something he would never fail to do. He exhaled a long breath, heavy with willpower. Ruthless clarity filled his chest. He forced his mind deep into darkness, into meditation forged through battle. The mind sinks like night. The spirit enters the void. Thoughts rise like wind without form. Distractions clawed at the edges of his mind, but his will, tempered through countless wars, slammed every gate shut. The fire in him raged. He locked it down. Piece by piece, he cooled it, turning molten lava into cold steel. Time stretched under that pressure. Sweat rolled down his back, soaking the sheets beneath him. His breathing, rough and nearly ragged, slowly returned to steadiness. Like a beast bound by seal, he suppressed the wild instincts clawing at his core. He held still, silent and absolute. Kushina remained frozen. But her senses were heightened. The scent of sweat, the heat of his skin, the low hum of chakra around her. Every drawn breath from behind her passed into her nerves. Gradually, exhaustion rose from deep inside. Today had drained her. The rush of reunion. The pride of showing him the home she had built. The quiet tension during dinner. The dazing kiss. The unexpected closeness. This moment now, walking the line between danger and trust. All of it had left her spirit hollow. Her panic faded. What remained was fatigue. Her tense body lost its strength. His embrace, once terrifying, now radiated a warmth that felt like shelter. His scent had changed. It was no longer the overwhelming heat of fire, but the steady weight of sun-dried oak. It wrapped around her gently, grounding her. She breathed it in. Her nerves loosened. The fear melted away, replaced by the kind of exhaustion that follows a long journey. Her eyelids grew heavy. Her thoughts drifted, like falling into syrup. Behind her, what once felt like danger now felt like the only warmth in a long, cold night. Unconsciously, she nuzzled against his chest, whispering softly, "Ryo." That small movement and the quiet call nearly shattered the wall he had built. His arm tightened. His throat bobbed hard. His control trembled. His body stiffened again, strung tight like a bow about to snap. But after that motion, she went still. Her breathing steadied. All tension faded. What remained was the complete trust of someone who had fallen asleep. She had fallen asleep. Like a seed, battered by wind and rain, finally sinking into still earth. Ryo slowly opened his eyes. The heat in them had not faded. If anything, it deepened. Her peaceful face, vulnerable in sleep, only made the restraint inside him harder to bear. He looked down at her. Her cheeks were still flushed. Long lashes cast soft shadows. A few strands of red hair stuck to her temple. In his arms, she slept. Behind him, the fire still raged, buried under his control. The aftershocks of his meditation still echoed in his soul. The beast had not been tamed. It had been forced to wait. Moonlight spilled through the window, pale and cold. The room was still. Only their breathing remained. Hers, calm and gentle. His, deep and strained. The contrast could not be sharper. Ryo didn't move. He stayed like stone, holding her in place. His eyes stared through the moonlit shadows outside. The night was long. Chapter 121, Sweet Cohabitation Bonus. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains and spilled onto the wooden floor of the new house. The room still held the warmth from the previous night, mingled with the fresh, pin-scented aura that lingered around Ryo. Kushina slowly opened her clear blue eyes. Turning her head, she saw Ryo still asleep. His jawline was sharp, the corners of his mouth faintly upturned. Even in sleep, the remnants of battlefield resolve lingered between his brows, radiating a powerful presence. But under the soft morning light, that edge seemed subdued. His features appeared calm and steady. His chest rose and fell evenly, and the quiet rhythm brought her peace. The tension from the night before had long faded. Now, the sleeping man beside her, restrained and steady, exuded a reliable strength. A warm current of affection welled in Kushina's chest. The sweetness in her heart chased away the last bit of sleepiness. She quietly lay there, her blue eyes fixed on the man she loved. An invisible pull tugged at her. Holding her breath, she carefully turned on her side and tilted her face upward slightly. With a soft exhale, her forehead lightly rested against Ryo's firm jaw. In that moment, Ryo's eyes opened instantly. Those dark eyes locked onto hers with no drowsiness, only sharp clarity and a heat that surged from close proximity. He immediately noticed her flushed cheeks and the startled expression from being caught. Kushina made a small sound, cut off midway by Ryo's sudden movement. She felt her waist tighten. A strong arm wrapped around her, pulling her tightly into his chest, denying any attempt to retreat. A warm hand gently supported the back of her neck, preventing her from turning her face away. The shift happened in a flash. Ryo's movement was fast and controlled. With minimal effort, he closed the distance between them. His breath was warmer than before, enveloping her in the calm pressure of his presence. There was no hesitation in the way he approached, as if saying, "If you come to me, then be ready to accept the result." Kushina's heartbeat jumped erratically. Lying against him, her back against the soft mattress, she could feel his fingers resting at the base of her neck, warm and deliberate. He paused there, the intent obvious. A soft sound slipped from her lips. Her cheeks flushed red, spreading down to her neck. Her body felt unbearably hot. Even though the power within her had been sealed, she felt completely defenseless under his aura. The hand she had raised to weakly resist fell, gripping the edge of the pillowcase instead. Every breath she took was filled with his scent. Just as the dominant yet gentle closeness felt overwhelming, the pressure abruptly lifted. Fresh air rushed in. Kushina took several deep breaths. The flush on her face remained, as red as a ripe apple. Her red hair lay scattered across the pillow. She buried her glowing face deeper, too embarrassed to look up at the deep, steady eyes above her. "Morning already, huh?" Ryo said, his voice low and hoarse, still carrying the gritty texture of just waking up. It rolled over her like a low vibration, sending a tingle through her heart. "You've gotten gutsy." I didn't." Kushina's voice was thin, her tone muffled and drenched in shyness, wholly unconvincing. She buried her face deeper into the pillow, curling into herself like a shy little red-haired ball. A deep chuckle rumbled in Ryo's chest. Kushina, pressed against him, trembled slightly in response. But he didn't tease her any further. He simply tossed the thin blanket aside and swung his legs off the bed. The sunlight traced the lines of his tall, lean frame. His well-defined muscles moved with purpose. Without looking back, he walked steadily toward the bathroom in his usual training shorts. Soon, the sound of cold water could be heard through the glass door. Only then did Kushina dare peek from under the blanket, her face still warm. Steam clung to the frosted bathroom glass, but the silhouette of his body remained visible. Water ran down his broad back and shoulders. Just that blurred view through the mist was enough to reignite the flush in her cheeks, this time spreading even faster. "Damn it," she muttered, annoyed with herself, like a real tomato being poked. She yanked the blanket over her head and rolled several times on the bed, both shy and frustrated. Her thoughts kept looping back to last night's ankle inspection, and this morning's completely unguarded counterattack. Her toes curled under the blanket, her body still remembering the feel of his touch. The cold shower seemed to clear away the last of Ryo's tension. When he came out, he had changed into a clean, dark training outfit. His damp red hair was swept casually back, revealing a clear forehead and still sharp brows. A calm, grounded air surrounded him. It was hard to reconcile this version of him with the man who had whispered provocative words earlier. "I'm going to train." He said this without turning as Kushina poked her head out from under the covers, still flushed. Then, he went straight downstairs. The courtyard of the new home was far more spacious than the previous one. Ryo didn't rely on fancy tools. With only simple warm-ups, his body moved, joints cracking crisply as he activated his strength. He planted his feet, rooted low and firm like an old pine. With a low shout, he called out. Earth release, weighted rock technique. A wave of invisible chakra spread over him like a crushing weight. The ground beneath him groaned under the sudden pressure. Under this heavy load, he began to swing his blade. No flourish, just the most fundamental moves. Slash, chop, thrust, spin. Once. 100 times. 1,000 times. The wooden training dummy shattered under the force. His bare arms bulged with tension. Sweat poured down his bronze-toned skin, dripping onto the hard-packed ground. Each swing brought thunderous momentum, every motion seamless. It wasn't just sword practice, it was refinement. His body and spirit were being honed with each repetition. The weight didn't hinder him. It sharpened him. The air split with every strike. Only the sound of sweat hitting the ground remained. The morning passed in this rhythm of raw power. The golden light turned harsh under the noon sun. Kushina had changed into comfortable loungewear and sat beneath the eaves, chin resting on her knees. Her blue eyes, mirroring the sky, were fixed on the figure in the yard. Bathed in sunlight, every inch of him glowed with a golden edge. She watched, unmoving. She watched him repeat simple motions, each one carrying the foundation of true strength. She saw the calm, quiet concentration in his brows. That deep-rooted stability, that solid and silent presence, gradually soothed the last flickers of her morning embarrassment. A warm feeling filled her heart. He's mine, and I belong only to him. The thought gently echoed. Under the eaves, the red-haired girl smiled. A quiet, sincere smile. Full of admiration. Full of happiness. Lunch was homemade. Kushina cooked it herself. After training, Ryo returned, washed off the sweat, and sat at the table. He ate quickly, like someone used to life in a shinobi camp. Just as they had set down their chopsticks, the yard filled with a familiar, lively voice. Hey, Ryo. Kushina. Guess who I brought? The cheerful shout came from Nawaki. Nawaki burst into the yard, one hand on his hip, the other carefully holding a young girl in a brand new dress. It was Uzumaki Kaori. Kushina's younger sister had finally recovered. After care and rest in Konoha, her pale face had taken on a healthy blush. She was still slim, her eyes still a little wary of strangers, but when she saw Kushina walk out from under the eaves, that instinctual blood bond lit up in her eyes like sunlight breaking through clouds. Big sis. Kaori's voice was clear and full of joy. Kushina's smile bloomed. She quickly stepped forward, knelt naturally, and opened her arms. In the sunlight, two flashes of bright red hair collided in a tight embrace. Kaori. Kushina's voice was filled with joy. She rubbed her cheek against Kaori's head, all her love and protectiveness pouring out in one motion. Nawaki grinned beside them and walked to the edge of the yard. He winked at Ryo, who was still wiping sweat with a towel. See that? Sisterly love, right? I handled the assignment beautifully. Ryo glanced at him with indifference, saying nothing. But when his eyes shifted back to the two sisters, a quiet softness appeared in the depths of his gaze. Not long after, the front door rang again. Excuse the intrusion. Makoto's clear and gentle voice came through. She wore a simple purple dress, her long black hair flowing naturally behind her. Her appearance was graceful, her smile calm like a spring breeze. She stepped inside, her gaze briefly sweeping over Ryo, who still radiated the intensity of his morning training. Then her eyes landed softly on the red-haired sisters. Hi, Makoto. Kushina stood, still holding Kaori's small hand. Her cheeks were still warm with joy. Kaori was just asking for you earlier. Was she? Makoto's smile deepened as her gaze settled on Kaori. She crouched slightly and said gently, you look very healthy today. That dress suits you. Her voice was calm and soothing. She turned to Kushina, and her smile grew a touch more knowing. I figured if you were here, I'd be able to find Kaori. Everything felt natural. Like they were longtime friends used to sharing every moment of their lives. But for those watching closely, something else stirred beneath the surface. At precisely 3:10, Makoto's eyes met Ryo's across the courtyard. His body still radiated heat and masculine strength. In that moment, her flawless smile faltered, only for a second. And her hand, which had fallen casually to her side, curved in a little more than necessary. A quiet ripple buried deep beneath the surface. Only she could feel the chill inside. But before Kushina's bright smile and Kaori's joyful gaze, that tiny tremor faded. Nawaki occasionally chatted with Ryo about training. Makoto would suggest, Kushina, let's go check out the shopping street. It's been a while since we looked at fabric. Or, the leaves by the southern river are turning red. Let's take Kaori. Her suggestions were always timely. Always just enough to draw Kushina out of the warm atmosphere of the home. Sometimes Kaori stayed behind with Nawaki. Sometimes Makoto took her away for sweets. Kushina, glancing back at Ryo in the yard, would hesitate. But seeing Kaori's eager eyes and Makoto's warm smile, she could only suppress the feeling and nod. Chapter 122, Tensions. The courtyard fell quiet in the evening, the last golden rays of sunset dancing across Ryo's sweat-covered body. Beads of sweat slid down his muscular frame, darkening the soil beneath him. Kaori and Makoto's figures had long disappeared beyond the gate, leaving only the faint scent of gardenias drifting in the breeze. Kushina gently closed the courtyard gate. Turning around, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Ryo stood directly behind her. His tall frame cast a heavy shadow, engulfing her completely. His gaze was sharp like a hawk, locked on her with an oppressive intensity. The air felt thick, almost solid. Hungry. Kushina's heart pounded. His presence was hotter, more forceful than usual, surging toward her like a summer storm. She instinctively took a half step back but forced herself to respond calmly. Quote. The word had barely left her lips before her feet left the ground. She was effortlessly lifted into Ryo's arms. His grip was firm, steel-like around her waist. Ah! Kushina gasped, instinctively clinging to his broad shoulders, her cheeks flushing red. Ryo! Put me down, I can walk. Too slow. Punishment. Ryo's voice boomed above her head. He entered the living room without releasing her, heading straight for the large sofa. Kushina tried to twist away, but as her toes touched the carpet, a powerful force closed in on her. Running. Ryo's voice lowered. The strength wasn't overwhelming, but it locked her down like iron shackles. An electric-like tremor ran through her, making her lean back. In that moment, Ryo closed in like a wall, pinning her firmly against the sofa. The air thinned instantly, filled only with the sound of their breathing. Kushina looked up into his eyes, which burned with restrained intensity. His gaze scorched her, making her chest tighten. Her pulse beat wildly under the pressure, and her foot accidentally brushed the fabric of his training clothes. His eyes darkened instantly. The hand gripping her wrist tightened slightly and began tracing up her arm with slow deliberation, as if inspecting territory already claimed. You're awful. Kushina's voice trembled with embarrassment, her face flushed with color. She tried to glare, but the pressure left her with no escape route. Ryo leaned in. The distance between them vanished. Kushina couldn't react in time, pinned by sheer force. All she could feel was the rumble of his chest, vibrating through her entire body. In the quiet living room, only their breathing remained, echoing like the clash of wills on a battlefield. This so-called punishment continued until Kushina's eyes were dazed, her cheeks flushed, and her whole body softened like water. Ryo still held her slender wrist as he pulled her toward the kitchen. Cook with me. His tone allowed no refusal. Still dazed, Kushina was pushed in front of the stove. Ryo stood behind her, his firm chest pressing against her back. He picked up a tomato to wash, movements efficient and clean. His breath brushed past her ear, raising goosebumps. Focus, little tomato, he said with a teasing chuckle. Then, his large hand wrapped around hers, guiding her to slice the tomato. The motion was slow and deliberate, every movement firm. His knuckles grazed hers with invisible authority, causing her heart to race. The kitchen filled with the sweet, tangy scent of tomatoes and his intense, masculine presence. She could feel the rise and fall of his chest behind her, its rhythm like distant war drums. The hands that guided hers also gripped her attention, making her heartbeat unsteady. Kushina's face burned, her hands moving stiffly like a puppet. Ryo's eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a tight line, suppressing the storm under his calm surface. Dinner ended in silence, like a draw in an emotional battle. Kushina washed the dishes quickly, then made her escape upstairs. But just as she reached the stairs, he caught her again. Bang! She was pinned to the cold wall by a sudden force. Ryo's arms propped on either side of her, completely blocking her escape. His tall frame loomed, pressing in with suffocating pressure. Why are you running? His voice was low, his gaze razor-sharp, falling on her heaving chest. Kushina's back was against the cool wall, her front against his burning hot chest. The sharp scent of his aftershave now mixed with the residual heat clinging to him. She looked up helplessly, locking eyes with the dark depths of his stare. There was fire still smoldering there, along with a hunter's playful satisfaction. Before she could speak, Ryo moved closer. This wasn't teasing anymore. It was a direct challenge. Only their eyes remained locked. Her body froze. The hand against the wall moved to her waist, gripping her firmly. His fingers slowly slid downward, each inch carrying an intense charge. Kushina's breath hitched. The tension shattered her self-control. Her legs lost strength. Her mind blanked, and her faint protest was swallowed by the silence. Ryo's grip tightened, wrapping fully around her waist. Her resistance collapsed completely. The night deepened outside, stars flickering coldly. As the storm calmed, Ryo suddenly let go and stepped back. Kushina slumped against the wall, eyes closed, gasping softly. Her lashes trembled like butterfly wings. Ryo's Adam's apple bobbed hard. His muscles tensed. He didn't look back. Instead, he turned and walked toward the balcony, each step heavy and sharp. Shower. The single word was guttural, almost forced through clenched teeth. A moment later, the glass door slammed shut. The cold air swept away the remaining heat. Kushina pressed against the wall, her heart pounding like a war drum. After a while, she finally managed to stand and slowly returned to her room. Through the balcony door, she could hear the sound of cold water crashing down. Ryo's figure stood in the mist, surrounded by an animalistic tension. Late at night, Kushina curled up in her soft bedding. The flush on her face had faded, but a strange sensitivity still lingered. Ryo's aura had not fully dissipated. The sound of water stopped. The house fell silent. Creak. The door opened softly. Steady footsteps approached the bed like approaching drums. The corner of the blanket lifted. Cold air followed. Ryo slipped under the covers and pulled her directly into his embrace. Ah, Kushina shuddered slightly, immediately pressed into his chest. His skin was cool from the shower, but the heat underneath surged like fire. Her back met his solid chest. One arm locked around her waist like a chain. The other supported her neck, his wrist resting against her temple. He smelled like soap and steam, his presence overwhelming. His breath wrapped around her, dominating everything. His heart pounded against her back, syncing with hers, forcing its rhythm onto her. Kushina couldn't breathe properly. His arms were the eye of the storm. Every muscle seemed charged, vibrating with suppressed power. In the darkness, his embrace locked her in place. Kushina dared not move. The moonlight was blocked behind the curtains. She could clearly feel his defined chest against her back, and the unyielding grip around her waist. His breathing was deep and slow, but the pressure remained. Her mind stayed alert. Her pulse raced. But gradually, the security behind her began to soften her tension. Exhaustion from the day rolled in like waves. Her eyelids grew heavy. Ryo's heartbeat echoed like a bell tower, and his arm was an impenetrable barrier. Her breath evened out. As if in a daze, she whispered softly, "Ryo." In an instant, the arm around her waist tightened violently. She gasped as if her bones would snap. Behind her, Ryo's sharp inhale cut through the silence. His muscles bulged, tension surging again. The lava that had frozen erupted once more. The air burned. But nothing happened. He didn't move further. Just a harsh, controlled breath. Then silence. His chest pressed tighter to hers. His restraint finally returned, though barely. The pressure eased just slightly. The moonlight was cold. Kushina's breathing slowed. She drifted into sleep, still nestled in his arms. Safe, within the core of the storm. Chapter 123. Cleaning the mess bonus. It was still quiet in the early morning in Konoha village. Suddenly, a soft thud came from outside the courtyard. The sound was faint, but to Ryo, whose perception was razor sharp, it was like a stone dropping into still water. He immediately opened his eyes. The discomfort from a poor night's sleep vanished at once. His gaze sharpened and turned calm. The presence outside the gate carried the distinct mark of the Konoha Anbu. There was urgency, and a trace of carefully measured respect. Beside him, Kushina stirred. She hadn't fully woken up. She mumbled quietly, shifting her head toward Ryo like a sleepy kitten. Instinctively, she clung to the corner of his clothing, clearly relying on him. Ryo glanced over. Her face was still creased with sleep. He hesitated for a second but quickly pushed down any lingering softness. A quiet, overwhelming aura radiated from him, the presence of a top-tier shinobi. He carefully pulled his arm from under her head and gently freed his cloak from her grip. Without the warmth of her pillow, the morning chill brushed against Kushina. Blinking, she rubbed her eyes and saw Ryo standing up. He was already grabbing the black training outfit hanging from the cupboard. "Ryo," she murmured. "Go back to sleep," he said in a low, husky voice. He didn't turn around. With practiced ease, he dressed, stepped out of the room in just a few strides, and shut the door softly behind him. The room felt instantly vast and quiet. Only the faint trace of his presence lingered in the air, cold and strong. Kushina wrapped herself tighter in the blanket, sat up, and stared at the closed door. Her chest felt hollow. But she understood. He had gone to handle something serious. She brushed back her hair, lay down again, and pressed her face against the pillow that still held his scent, quietly waiting. Outside, the morning air carried a slight chill. An Anbu operative knelt stiffly on one knee on the stone-paved path. His head was lowered, body tense, not daring to meet Ryo's gaze. "Kamiyama Ryasama," the masked Anbu said, voice low and slightly muffled. "The Hokage has urgent business. Please proceed to the Hokage building immediately." Ryo's expression didn't change. His sharp eyes swept over the operative. "No need to ask questions. From the tremor in the man's chakra and his barely contained breath, Ryo already knew it was serious. For the Hokage to summon him directly, there could only be one explanation, a major event. He nodded. The Anbu seemed to relax, vanishing in a flash. Ryo cracked his neck, as though shaking off the stiffness of sleep. Last night's lingering tension now had somewhere to go. He walked to the center of the courtyard and delivered a sudden punch to the wooden training post. A deep rumble echoed. The entire post shattered from the impact, splinters flying. Even the ground trembled. His sweat dripped onto the loosened earth. The black training outfit clung to his muscles. He didn't need a warm-up. Just standing there was enough to show his strength. Kushina, watching from the window, remained silent. The early sunlight bathed his figure in golden light. It outlined the strong curve of his shoulders, his focused expression, and the sweat sliding along his jawline. Her chest warmed. She watched him, filled with trust and emotion. Ryo suddenly stopped. Without turning, he spoke toward the window. Kushina, I'm heading out for a bit. I'll be back soon. She answered immediately. Her tone was bright and clear. She didn't ask anything, just trusted he would return. Ryo dropped his stance. He didn't wipe the sweat off. His figure flickered and vanished through the gate. In the courtyard, only splintered wood remained, and the heavy aura of power that lingered in the silence. Inside the Hokage's office, the atmosphere was thick and heavy, like air before a storm. Sarutobi Hiruzen stood by the window, pipe clenched between his teeth, staring at the waking village. Smoke curled in the air, but the hand holding the pipe was white from tension. The door opened soundlessly. Ryo entered. He walked calmly, showing no signs of rushing. His black clothes were neat, expression unreadable. Only his deep, focused gaze met the turning Hokage. Hokage-sama. You're here, Ryo, Hiruzen said, urgency replacing the calm facade on his face. This is critical. I need you and your team to head to the Land of Rain immediately. He paused, staring straight into Ryo's eyes. More specifically, you. Assist Orochimaru on a special mission. Ryo didn't blink. Why? Hiruzen took a deep drag on the pipe, then exhaled slowly. Our top intel source in Iwagakure has sent a warning. That old fox Onoki is mobilizing a large force, likely aiming to push through the Land of Grass and strike the Land of Fire's border. The war is escalating. We need to open a second front in the Land of Grass. His hand on the pipe trembled. Opening a second front would stretch manpower and supplies thin. Ryo stayed quiet. After a few seconds, he looked at Hiruzen and said flatly, Onoki. Is this because we captured his son? The air cracked. Hiruzen froze. The pipe nearly slipped. His eyes widened. His son, Kitsuchi, was taken. That's what triggered all this. Why wasn't I informed? What am I even doing here then? The blow struck hard. No wonder Iwagakure was acting up. Capturing the Tsuchikage's son. That was massive. Ryo didn't flinch. He answered like stating a weather report. Capturing prisoners during war is standard. Kitsuchi, as far as I know, was taken during a mission. Command and intel-related matters fall under Danzo-sama. He's the one overseeing the Land of Rain theater. Hiruzen's expression turned stormy. Danzo. Again. He slammed the pipe down. Ash scattered. That man has no respect for my authority. This isn't a minor issue. Why didn't you return the prisoner to Konoha immediately? Ryo replied without emotion. I'm a chunin assigned to the task. I have no command authority. My job is to execute missions, not question high-level operations. Danzo-sama is responsible. Hiruzen's fists clenched. He knew he had been bypassed. Knew it, and could do nothing about it. That man always moves in the shadows. Curse him. Ryo stood silently. Fine. Interfere with Iwa now. Consider it revenge for the last time those Kumo dogs dared target Kushina. I understand the mission, Ryo said at last. His words were short and cold. I'll gather my gear and move out. Seeing him accept without resistance, Hiruzen's nerves eased slightly. He nodded heavily. Good. I'm counting on you. The situation may erupt any moment. Go. Ryo turned without another word and left. The heavy wooden door closed behind him, cutting off the weight of the Hokage's stare. In the tower's first-floor hall, Naoki and Makoto were already waiting. Both had their travel packs. Naoki looked grumpy from being woken early, but he was still eager. Makoto was calm and steady. Her gaze showed concern. Ryo walked down the stairs. Ryo. Naoki called. Makoto nodded silently, her eyes meeting his. Is Kaori taken care of? Ryo asked. Naoki gave a thumbs up. Don't worry. My family's caretaker is reliable. She'll be safe. Ryo nodded. You two go to the village gate and wait for me. I'll head home first. It won't take long. His eyes briefly stayed on Makoto. She nodded. Understood. Got it. Nawaki added. Both disappeared toward the village gate. Ryo's figure shot in the other direction. The small courtyard gate was slightly open. Ryo stepped inside and saw Kushina standing by the doorway, waiting. She hadn't moved since he left. Morning light made her hair gleam, but her figure looked small. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her robe. As soon as she saw him, her eyes brightened and she rushed forward a step. Ryo didn't hesitate. I have to leave immediately. Urgent mission in the land of rain. Her expression fell instantly. That sudden blow made her chest tighten. Their peaceful life together had only just begun. She knew how dangerous the battlefield was. She forced down the panic. I know, she said softly. Her voice trembled, but she held herself steady. Please, she added, her words slow and clear, be careful. Come back safe. Her sky-blue eyes were filled with emotion. I'll wait for you. Right here. He looked into her eyes but didn't say anything back. Instead, he lifted his hand and gently brushed her cheek. Before she could respond, he leaned down and pressed a soft, solemn kiss to her forehead. It was brief, but strong enough to leave a mark on the heart. No words. Just that kiss said everything. Before she could react, he wiped a small tear forming at the edge of her eye. Then, without a word, he turned and left. Kushina froze. That kiss. The way he wiped her tears. It was overwhelming. Her heart pounded. She wanted to call out to him, say something more, but the words caught in her throat. She could only watch his back as he disappeared. Please, come back safe, Ryo, she whispered. The wind took her voice away. At the village gate beneath the large Konoha crest, Nawaki and Makoto were already waiting. Nawaki kept pacing. Makoto stood still, arms crossed, her gaze occasionally drifting inward. A gust of wind swept past. Ryo appeared. Let's move, he said flatly. No rousing words. Just that command. Understood. Nawaki's chakra burst out, and he shot forward. Makoto took one last look down the path toward the village. The red-haired figure still lingered in her mind, but she shoved it aside and leapt forward. The three figures raced out of Konoha's gates, the wind howling behind them. Konoha grew smaller behind them. The trees grew sparse. The road ahead was dry and cold. Chapter 124, The Hardest Escape Artist. In the land of rain, at Konoha's base, medical zone. The heavy flap of the tent was yanked open with a sharp whoosh. Ryo stepped in first. Cold rainwater dripped from the edge of his forehead protector, splattering dark spots onto the mud at his feet. Behind him, Nawaki and Makoto followed closely. All three looked worn and ragged. Their forehead protectors and shoulder guards were stained, and their clothes were soaked, dusty, and splattered with mud from their rushed journey from Konoha. Nichan. Nawaki's loud voice rang out as Ryo gave a subtle nod at the same time. Deep in the tent, Tsunade looked up from a towering stack of casualty reports. Her brows were tightly furrowed, her face full of frustration. But when she saw the sword-wielding figure at the entrance, the tension on her face eased, if only for a moment. That moment passed quickly. A deeper irritation took over as she slammed the thick report onto the table with a loud thud, the pages rustling angrily. Finally, Tsunade stood up abruptly and walked over, crouching in front of Ryo. Her white medical coat was stained with dark red blood. Under the cold surgical lamp, the blotches looked even more ominous. You didn't get intercepted by those persistent Iowa bastards, right? This whole place is a damn powder keg, could blow any second. Her words came rapid-fire, reflecting the disaster unfolding on the front lines. Ignoring Nawaki's heavy breathing, she locked her eyes onto Ryo. Her expression was one of deep frustration. Then, she exploded. Danzo. That old bastard Danzo. Her voice rose sharply, her suppressed fury erupting. Kitsuchi. Onoki's son. He had him dragged into a dungeon, tortured like scum, without even asking a damn question. Treated like some low-ranking enemy spy. If we hadn't discovered it in time. Her voice choked off. She stood with hands on her hips, chest heaving with rage. Her glare could burn holes through the wood, and the small table beside her trembled faintly under the pressure of her fury. And now, that kid's hanging by a thread. Tsunade's voice dropped, cold and sharp. His body's wrecked, like a shattered porcelain doll. Internal organs shredded, multiple arteries severed. He's 30% alive, if that. All thanks to Danzo's mess. Wasted a talented shinobi. Ryo remained silent, letting Tsunade vent. When the final word, wasted, fell, his lips curled slightly. It wasn't a smile, more like a cynical smirk. So, Danzo smashed him into a coma, and someone leaked the intel to Onoki. I thought Danzo was planning to use Kitsuchi as a bargaining chip. When that failed, he panicked and tried to grab him back by force. His tone was flat, but the sarcasm was unmistakable. He let out a small breath. What if Danzo ends up taking the fall for everything? He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Nawaki snorted quietly beside him, barely holding back a laugh. Ha! Who do you think started this whole mess? Tsunade rolled her eyes and glared. It all began with you, you punk. You pulled Kitsuchi in, then Danzo wrapped it around his neck, and now the whole shinobi world is about to explode. Seeing Tsunade's eyes glaring up close, Ryo scratched the bridge of his nose awkwardly. Well. Tsunade shot him a hard glare, then reluctantly dropped the matter. She knew full well that while Ryo started it, the one who nearly killed someone and sparked Onoki's wrath was Danzo. An awkward silence weighed down the tent. Even the air felt heavy. Nawaki shrank his neck, not daring to breathe. Makoto anxiously glanced back and forth between Tsunade and Ryo, fidgeting with the corner of her cloak. Ryo's brief embarrassment vanished quickly, replaced by his usual calm. He turned back to Tsunade, his voice serious. So, why did Orochimaru specifically ask for me? Everyone knows he's researching the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki. But I'm not a sealing specialist. Just then, the heavy tent flap parted again without warning. A tall, pale figure glided in like a shadow. A chilling, slick presence instantly swallowed up the warmth, replacing it with cold dread and the scent of decay. Orochimaru. Dressed in dark robes, his golden, snake-like eyes gleamed in the dim light. That familiar smile, filled with twisted curiosity, curled on his lips. His gaze, cold and predatory, locked straight onto Ryo. Hey, Ryokan, your senses are as sharp as ever. Orochimaru's voice was low and hoarse, every syllable oozing with strange rhythm. He ignored Tsunade's icy glare and the tense reactions from Nawaki and Makoto. His attention was fixed solely on Ryo. The plan to deal with the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki is ready. The key, he paused deliberately, is how to retreat after the explosion. His vertical pupils pinned Ryo like prey. Your flying thunder god technique is the most reliable insurance. After all the trouble of driving that Jinchuriki into a frenzy, I refuse to be hunted down by Kumo's elite or die meaninglessly. A death without research value is a complete waste. Nawaki and Makoto finally snapped back to their senses and bowed in haste. Orochimaru-sama. Ryo met Orochimaru's eyes, and in that instant, he understood. He was Orochimaru's exit plan. The guaranteed escape route. His lips curled faintly. Got it. When do we move? Orochimaru's grin deepened. The sooner, the better. Danzo's latest stunt is a high-yield bomb. I was already gone insane. Forces are massing at the border. Scouts are crawling everywhere. We have to move now. Push the Eight-Tails into a rampage and pin the blame on Iwa. That way, Kumo will focus its wrath on them, and Onoki will have his hands full up north. His disdain for Danzo was clear, every word dripping with mockery. We'll clean up his mess. Ryo nodded without hesitation. All right. Today works. Say the word. A wise choice. Orochimaru's voice was pleased, as if all variables were under his control. It won't take long. His figure dissolved into the shadows, slipping out of the tent like a ghost, leaving behind a cold silence. The oppressive air finally lifted slightly. Ryo turned to Nawaki and Makoto. Makoto. Nawaki. You two stay behind. What? Nawaki jumped, face turning red in anger and embarrassment. Me. Stay back. TCH, with your flashy little tricks. Before he could finish, Tsunade smacked him on the back of the head, nearly sending him tumbling into a pile of medical waste. You wanna run around being target practice? Or get in Ryo's way? Get out of here. Go help in the rear unit. Carry stretchers for the guy's missing limbs. Now. Her voice left no room for argument. Nawaki clutched his head, completely shut down. Makoto didn't protest. Instead, she quietly let out a breath of relief. She knew how dangerous this mission was. Just not dragging them down was already doing her part. Still, she looked at Ryo with worried eyes, filled with silent strength. Ryo met her gaze briefly. Calm reassurance passed between them. When Tsunade turned back, her tone was rough, but something in her expression shifted. Hey, you little brat. She paused, as if struggling to get something out. Don't go running off to get yourself killed. I've got enough patience in here already. She turned around quickly, pretending to check the bandages on a comatose shinobi, but the slight flush on her ears gave her away. Ryo didn't say anything. He looked at Tsunade's awkward, forced busy posture, and the corners of his eyes softened. This was how she showed she cared. The wait wasn't long. Outside, the rain pounded harder. Footsteps approached, steady and light. The flap opened again. Orochimaru returned, fully equipped this time. A special scroll box was strapped to his back, his golden snake eyes gleaming with anticipation. Ryokan. Let's go. Without a word, Ryo picked up his gear. A small tool bag already prepared. He swung it over his back and tied it tight. Nawaki opened his mouth but only managed a quiet, "Be careful." Makoto's eyes followed him closely, filled with silent farewell. And Ryo's figure sliced through the rain like black lightning, vanishing beyond the flap. A cold gust blew through the tent, stripping away the last warmth. Orochimaru followed, his pale figure melting into the storm. The rain swallowed them quickly, as if they'd never been there. Only 3 remained in the tent. Nawaki. Face red with frustration. Makoto. Silent with worry. Tsunade. Hiding anxiety beneath her rage. Chapter 125. View on Life. The pitch-black night sky, heavy as ink, pressed down on the soaked earth of the land of rain. 2 figures cut through the downpour like phantoms riding the wind, their shadows flashing across puddle-filled ruts before being swallowed by the relentless rain. Up ahead, Orochimaru raced forward. His broad cloak flapped violently in the wind, and his pale face once again revealed the twisted, familiar smile. Ryokan, you seem awfully concerned about that little girl from the Uzumaki clan. His voice was low yet sharp, slicing through the sound of rain and landing directly in Ryo's ears. Ryo's brow twitched, his foot smashing through a puddle. There it was again, Ryokan. Every time Orochimaru said it, it felt like a cold snake coiling around his neck. His tone, slick and unnatural, made Ryo's scalp prickle. The gaze behind those golden vertical pupils always carried something ominous. He forced down the irritation, focusing on the mission. If not for that, he might have drawn his blade and ended this so-called partnership right there. How much intel do we have on the Eight Tails Jinchuriki and Kumo? His voice turned cold as he matched Orochimaru's pace. This was a matter of survival. He needed accurate intel. Orochimaru ran smoothly beside him, not turning his head. He pulled out a scroll and tossed it over. Here. Information on the sleeper agents. He'll open a path into Kumogakure. As for what happens after we're in. His lips curled. His tongue flicked briefly across them, snake-like. That's when the real performance begins. He exhaled, voice dripping with meaning. Shame, the long-buried pawn can't be used. Ryo caught the scroll, sneering inwardly. What a load of crap. Once the infiltration gets exposed, Kumo will dig through its underbelly and torch everything. The value of a spy lies in burning bright when the stakes are highest. Once you take that path, getting crushed is inevitable. A pawn that stays buried forever is one that's already useless. That phony regret in Orochimaru's voice only made Ryo more alert. His mind sharpened, bordering on paranoia. Suddenly. Tell me, Ryokan, how do you view the meaning of life? Orochimaru's voice cut in like a blade, completely shifting topics. The rain kept hammering down, but that question rang louder than thunder. Ryo stopped. He twisted his body midair, landing on a hard rock slab by the roadside. He needed distance. Breathing room. Space from this man. Orochimaru halted as well, standing motionless in the rain. His golden eyes locked onto Ryo, cold and still. Ryo pulled out the scroll, along with his rations and water bottle. With a thud, he sat down, clearly signaling a short rest. He didn't drop his guard, eyes fixed on Orochimaru through the rain. Probably, just living, Ryo replied, tearing open his food packet. His tone was flat, but his voice was crisp against the rain. Ask 1,000 people, get 1,000 answers. And the one before him, this man sought eternal life. Ryo didn't have such lofty ambitions. All he wanted was to survive, to protect those he cared about. Just to stay alive. That alone was enough. Living. Orochimaru repeated, intrigued. Why living? He seemed genuinely interested in the answer, as if trying to dissect the thought process behind it. That's not something one expects from a child your age, he murmured, voice trailing as he recalled something. Quote. That kid's answer was truly heartwarming. Ryo's heart skipped a beat. Something was off. Nawaki was all youthful spirit, not introspection. Then who, or what, triggered Orochimaru's obsession with this question? Those golden eyes gleamed with a terrifying light. Warning bells blared in Ryo's mind. He drank a mouthful of icy water, forcing his thoughts into order. His voice stayed steady. Because life only has meaning while it beats. Once you're dead, everything resets to zero. He stared at Orochimaru, trying to read his expression. Silence. Orochimaru didn't move. His pale face stayed frozen under the storm, like a statue. Ryo chewed quietly. Every nerve on edge. Then suddenly. Haha. A low chuckle slipped from Orochimaru's throat, breaking the tension. Interesting. A very interesting perspective, Ryokan. That sentence seemed to trigger something. His laughter stopped. He suddenly pulled out a blank scroll and a fine-tipped pen, then started writing rapidly under the downpour. Quote. Ryo's eyes widened. Insane. Completely deranged. This just confirmed it. Orochimaru was a late-stage psychopath. That obsession with life, yeah, he was already drafting another forbidden experiment. The blackened version of Orochimaru in the original timeline didn't just betray people. He betrayed family, killed teachers, stole eyes, experimented on bodies. He was a walking catastrophe. And now this. Genius. No. In this shinobi world, war often breeds minds that leap past genius and straight into madness. Eventually, Orochimaru finished, storing away the scroll with care. His usual smile returned. The kind that made Ryo's scalp itch. Shall we continue? He asked. Let's go, Ryo answered sharply, leaping off the rock and back into the rain. He wanted to finish this mission and cut ties with this guy, fast. Their path was set. They left the land of rain, passed through the scarred terrain of the land of fire, crossed the once peaceful but now ruined land of hot water, and finally arrived at the border of the land of the moon. War hadn't faded. Along the way, they saw refugees, scorched earth, and broken villages. By nightfall, they found shelter in the remains of an old warehouse. The scent of old blood had long faded. Ryo handled the logistics, setting up a fire and clearing space. Orochimaru disappeared into the shadows but returned not long after, a half-willed deer slung over his shoulder. Flames danced. The smell of roasting meat cut through the cold. Ryo cleaned and butchered the deer with precision, seasoning the cuts with a secret blend before grilling them. The aroma wafted, warm and rich. Ryokan's cooking is quite impressive, Orochimaru said, accepting a grilled leg with a rare note of genuine appreciation. No wonder even Tsunade once broke protocol to take you as her student. Ryo gnawed on the meat, gaze flickering toward the land of rain. I wonder how much longer that war will last, he muttered. Orochimaru sliced his piece delicately. Until every participating village bleeds out its last drop of strength. Until even they can no longer endure the cost. War is merely an efficient method of transferring internal pressure. Ryo glanced sideways at him. Sharp, he admitted silently. Set aside morality, Orochimaru's view of the shinobi world was chillingly accurate. Their rest ended in quiet vigilance. As dawn approached, mountain shadows rose before them. The air grew thin and sharp. Clouds pressed low and heavy, and lightning snaked through them like silver serpents. Boom! A thunderclap shook the sky. A mountain cliff exploded. Rocks rained down. This was the infamous thunderstorm of the land of lightning, wild, violent, and utterly destructive. Walking across this storm-touched land, Ryo instantly understood why Kumo shinobi leaned toward lightning release. Generations had grown up inhaling charged air, lulled to sleep by rolling thunder. It became second nature. He remembered a dumb joke from his past life. Elemental specialization theory. Mist ninjas do water, Iwa does earth, Suna does wind, Kumo does lightning. And Konoha. A random mix of everything. After the first Hokage, Mokuden all but vanished. Konoha's true hallmark was having too many, ridiculous, bloodline clans to count. As they neared Kumogakure's outer territory, Ryo's alertness sharpened. Orochimaru found a crevice and solemnly unsealed a scroll. Ryokan, we need a change. Our faces are too recognizable. Inside Kumo, freedom of movement will be impossible. Ryo nodded. Standard infiltration procedure. But when Orochimaru opened the scroll and dumped the contents, Ryo's expression turned complex. Wigs. All green. Fresh green. Forest green. Dark green. Every shade imaginable. His mind blanked. Was Orochimaru a green wig collector? Then came the black box. Inside, a putrid mixture of herbal paste and rancid grease. Ryo almost retched. It got worse. Orochimaru picked up the darkest green wig and dipped his hand into the black goo, preparing to apply both to Ryo. Ryo's body stiffened. A visceral sense of revulsion surged. Enough. He leapt back several meters, face horrified. You want me to wear that? Forget it. He pointed at the green wig like it was a cursed object. And that black stuff. One touch, and I swear I'm taking you down with me. Green wig. Black ointment. That combo. He'd rather die. Orochimaru paused, confused by the outburst. He sniffed the wig, glanced at the paste, still unsure what the problem was. Ryokan, your intel is likely already on the desks of the 4-cage. If you don't disguise completely. No way, Ryo cut in. I'll do it myself. Don't worry. I'll stay in contact. Orochimaru stared at him for a moment. Seeing the refusal was genuine, he finally gave up. In that case, he said slowly. What followed was a visual nightmare for Ryo. Orochimaru calmly put on the dark green wig, its strands fluttering in the wind. Then, without hesitation, he scooped a large portion of the some ointment and applied it to his face, neck, and arms. Rubbing, smearing, transforming. Well then, see you in the Cloud Village, Orochimaru said cheerfully. His voice rasped, full of old-age disguise. Before Ryo could retch again, that horrifying green silhouette vanished into the mountain pass. Damn. Ryo stood there, breathing deeply, trying to calm himself. Never, ever, not even as a corpse. Chapter 126, The Eight-Tails Jinchuriki Goes Berserk. A sharp blend of roasted meat, rich alcohol, and clean mountain air hit Ryo the moment he stepped across the boundary into Kumogakure. Strangely enough, walking into this so-called Cloud Fortress felt easier than returning to Konoha. The irony wasn't lost on him. While Konoha was still limping from war wounds, Kumo had turned its terrain and specialty exports into gold. Wealth clung to every stone, every shout in the street. Ryo looked up. The entire village was built into the side of a steep mountain, tiered structures stacked along narrow ridges like a fortress grown out of rock. Stone buildings gleamed coldly in the sun, exuding raw, deliberate power. The streets were alive. Merchants with varied accents laughed over drinks. Porters hauled crates through tight alleys. Kumo's prized exports, high mountain beef and strong liquor kept purses open across the shinobi world. The place was war-ready, sure, but the commercial front was impossible to miss. Everyone here walked tall. Twice, the shinobi world had carved chunks out of Konoha's strength. But these Kumo folk, muscle-bound, cocky, and thick-necked, they strolled the streets like they owned them. That energy. Ryo didn't hate it. He stopped at a street stall, grabbed a wide-brimmed traveler's hat, and pulled it low over his eyes. A quick transformation jutsu followed, a poof of smoke and his features shifted. Softer lines, tougher skin, clothes downgraded to rough traveling gear. A generic gold seeker from the borderlands. It wasn't flawless, but it would fool the guards. Hat low, posture loose, Ryo merged into the crowd. Stone slabs clacked beneath his boots. Weapon shops glittered to one side. Butchers swung cleavers beside beef legs larger than most men. Liquor vendors sold drinks that smelled like they could peel paint off walls. Kumo's average villager easily dwarfed Konoha shinobi. Surrounded by walking biceps, even Ryo's disguised, minor, figure felt wiry. He snorted internally. Exports. Highland beef, liquor barrels, and steroid bros. One man passed carrying half a cow on his shoulder like a backpack. Ryo muttered under his breath, if this world had bodybuilding competitions, Kumo would sweep gold every year. His stomach growled. If he was here, might as well sample the local flavor. He followed the strongest scent trail into a bustling tavern. Inside, chaos reigned. Shirtless men slammed down tankards. Skewers crackled over flame. Spit flew. Laughter rumbled loud enough to shake the walls. Boss. One beef shank, extra crisp on the outside. Ryo shouted as he slid into a bench by the wall, taking in the air like a man coming off a fast. Got it, came the booming reply. A hulking chef swung his cleaver into a slab of roasted meat bigger than Ryo. With one brutal chop, a caramelized shank thudded onto a wooden tray and landed in front of him. It was massive, but the scent of pine smoke, charred fat, and secret marinade made his mouth water. Ryo wasted no time. He tore into the shank. Fat burst on contact, rich and addictive. The meat practically dissolved. He grabbed the nearest bottle of local barley liquor and knocked it back. The spicy kick hit hard and fast, opening every pore in his body. Ah, that hit different, he muttered. Around him, the chaos grew louder. He kept chewing, but his ears never stopped working. Did you hear? The land of rain's going crazy. Leaf, Suna, Iwa, even that so-called demigod, Hanzo showed up. Demigod. He's half-baked. They stir up mess in neutral zones cause they wouldn't last 10 minutes facing Kumo. And don't forget, the third Raikage is backing us. Strongest shinobi alive. More laughter. Thick with pride. Kumo arrogance was overflowing. They'd grown fat on peace, rich on trade, and high on their own strength. That kind of mindset. Ryo smiled. The more arrogant they got, the more cracks they left. After polishing off the shank and wiping grease from his fingers, Ryo stepped back onto the street. He played the wide-eyed tourist, slowly exploring the inner districts. Stone carvings marked ancient clan lines. Steep paths curved around waterfalls. Towering above all, a massive statue of Raijin loomed like a guardian deity. He grabbed some dried meat, a few bottles of liquor, and a carved wooden souvenir etched with a thunder motif. Cheap stuff. But the perfect props for a rich outsider. Stuffed wallet. By the canyon falls, a faint pulse ticked across his senses. Flying Thunder God Seal. Orochimaru had arrived. Ryo didn't approach. Instead, he swept the area passively with sensory technique. The seal buzzed faintly from behind a pile of discarded building debris. Orochimaru's chakra lingered. Cold. Tense. Coiled like a snake waiting to strike. After the mission, you leave Kumo and return to Konoha. Your infiltration ends, Orochimaru's voice cut through faintly. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. The spy answered, trembling like someone who'd survived execution. Used and discarded, but still breathing. Go, Orochimaru said, shooing him like a fly. The house fell quiet. Ryo kept walking, hands behind his back, wooden carving spinning lazily in one palm. His gaze brushed past a weather-worn door hidden in the shadows. He didn't linger. Orochimaru hadn't noticed him, and Ryo's flying thunder god seal was already embedded. Even if Orochimaru slithered to the far corners of the earth, Ryo could follow. Unless he unlocked real immortality, there was no escape. The days passed. Ryo stuck to his act. Tourist. Rich. Curious. He mapped out open routes, guard rotations, blind spots, and explosive points of opportunity. His mental map grew more detailed with each lap. Orochimaru moved differently. He had taken over a rundown meat shop near the outskirts. The air stank faintly of medicine. The original owner was likely dead. Orochimaru played the role of a mute street chef. Just skilled enough to avoid suspicion. But the plan was clear, he'd use the restaurant as his base to strike the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki. Kill the host. Trigger panic. Leave enough evidence to blame Iwa. Whether Iwa did it or not didn't matter. Kumo would explode, and Orochimaru would vanish in the smoke. The target this time wasn't a killer B-type genius. The host was weak, ostracized, mentally unstable. A perfect puppet for Orochimaru's twisted games. 5 days passed. No movement. Then, at twilight on the 5th day, everything snapped. Ryo's sensory net exploded. A tidal wave of violent chakra burst into being. Hot. Wild. Twisted. The source, directly behind Orochimaru's shop. He's already started. A scream echoed across the village. Inhuman. Agonized. Drenched in hatred. A column of dark red chakra spiraled into the sky. Lava-like, pulsing with raw destruction. At the center, a vague human silhouette distorted as chakra wrapped around it like living armor. A tailed beast cloak. RRAAAAAGHH. A second roar followed. Deeper. Full bestial. Fukai. Get a hold of yourself. Sound the alarm. Jinchurikis lost control. Kumo's hidden Anbu units erupted into motion. One fired a flare. Thump. Pop. A blood-red signal lit the sky like a warning sun, blooming high above the village. Ryo's gaze narrowed. Inside the chaos, Shinobi paused, looked up, then froze. That flare. Top alert. That's near the Jinchuriki's zone. That chakra, that's the Eight Tails. Mobilize. All Jonin, move now. Panic spread like fire. Merchants bolted. Civilians screamed. Shinobi burst from every alley, chakra signatures lighting up like stars across the skyline. The tailed beast cloak trembled. Then exploded. A massive silhouette formed in the smoke. Bull horns. Tentacle tails. The Eight Tails' monstrous frame towered over the rooftops. Pure chakra flooded outward like a tidal wave. RRROOOOAAARR. D. The ground cracked. 10 buildings shattered. Shockwaves tore through the lower blocks. Stone chunks rained like meteors. Kumogakure plunged into chaos. And inside a tiny, soot-stained restaurant tucked near the epicenter. Ha, ha, ha. Orochimaru set down a greasy rag. His chef face remained blank, but those golden snake eyes glittered with delight. On the counter lay a scroll tucked beneath an apron. Beside it, a fingertip-sized vial shimmered with faint purple light. Clear. Odorless. The trigger for this mess. Then. Nice job, Orochimaru. A calm voice rang behind him. Orochimaru froze. Every nerve tensed. His snake-like instincts screamed. That voice wasn't just familiar. It was loaded. He turned slowly. Ryokan, popping in like that could give someone a heart attack. Ryo raised an eyebrow. That's so. I thought your nerves were already coiled tighter than a viper's jaw. Then, crack. Chapter 127, Rampage. Boom. A sudden, explosive roar tore through the air. The bluestone ground beneath their feet shattered like brittle glass. From deep underground, a primal force, ancient and beast-like, broke its chains and surged upward. Thick, nearly tangible strands of violet-black chakra shot into the sky and spread outward. The chakra radiated pure hatred, thick enough to blot out the sun. In an instant, it smashed through Kumo's carefully constructed defenses. The shockwave surged with choking dust, tearing through the village like a living beast. Buildings groaned and collapsed. Rubble rained down like hail. Screams of terror mixed with the sound of destruction, and in mere moments, a peaceful village was plunged into hell. Ryo tilted his head slightly, letting the wind, thick with dust and sand, sweep across his sharp features. In the distance, the violet-black beam marking a tailed beast's rampage pierced the sky. His eyes showed no panic, only cold analysis. Oh. The eight tails is loose, he said, his voice low but strangely clear through the chaos. Kumo's sealing technique really is something, about as durable as wet paper. His tone was flat, sarcasm cutting like a blade. He didn't take his eyes off the chaos and continued, what's more impressive is you, Orochimaru. Just a few days, and you managed to send that beast over the edge. What did you use? From the shadows nearby, Orochimaru calmly sealed several vials of strange liquid into a scroll. His pale face flickered in and out of the dusty light. Hey, just a little catalyst, he replied with eerie satisfaction. A formula tailored to specific mental waves. Designed to amplify those souls full of hatred and despair. As he stored the scroll, his voice blended regret and delight. On a tailed beast, a mass of negative energy, the effect is overwhelming. Sadly, it only works once. After this, the other villages will begin developing countermeasures. A shame for the art. Ryo's expression didn't change. Once was enough. He picked up an empty bottle from the table. A few drops of violet liquid clung to its sides. He opened it and took a sniff. It was odorless and colorless, like purified air, calm and terrifying. This unremarkable substance had triggered the entire disaster. Scientists really were pure creatures of logic, cold and ruthless. He tossed the bottle among the shattered stones at his feet and looked toward the heart of the chaos. You want to watch, or are we leaving? He knew the rampage wouldn't last long. That rakeage named, A, would arrive soon. Total destruction of Kumo. Unlikely. The core goal was complete. A blade had been driven into the heart of the village, with dirt thrown on Iwa. The rest was Orochimaru's work. Ryo hadn't been idle either, having taken a stroll through Thundercloud Gorge and collected a few local souvenirs for Kushina to try. Orochimaru had just put the scroll away when he turned, that signature cold, eerie smile spreading across his face. Ryokan, interested in watching an encore performance. Ryo's lips twitched faintly. Of course. Wouldn't want to miss it. Free ticket to a beast match. Can't say no to that. He noticed Orochimaru's wide sleeve seemed unusually heavy. Most likely he'd pocketed a horn fragment from the eight tails. Roar. The sound tore through the dusty sky, filled with destructive intent. As the smoke cleared slightly, a massive, crimson chakra monster stood at the center of the village, rampaging without restraint. Its shape flickered between forms, sometimes serpentine, sometimes octopus-like. Beneath the cloak of chakra, skeleton and muscle flashed faintly. Chaos incarnate. The Jinchuriki, Fukai, had already been consumed by hatred. Hichibi's violent will had taken full control. The only thought now was destruction. Its massive limbs swept out like meteors, trailing violent gales. Boom. Crash. Solid hotel walls were shredded like paper. Another swing carved deep scars in the ground. Market stalls were flattened. Screams, debris, and terror formed a desperate chorus. Villagers and merchants fled in panic like ants beneath a storm. Earth release. Multiple earth wall. A hoarse roar rang out. Tsuchidai, Kumo's acting commander, led a group of dust-covered jonin straight into the chaos. Slamming his palms onto the ground, Tsuchidai pushed chakra out with force. Massive earthen walls erupted, rising like cliffs and layering upon one another. A temporary defense appeared in the Eight Tails' path. Hold it here. Seal squad, now. Reinforce the seal. Tsuchidai's voice cracked from strain. Sweat and dust dripped down his face as his bloodshot eyes locked onto the rampaging chakra beast slamming against the walls. Each impact shattered cracks through the defenses. Where is the Raikage? Why isn't he here yet? Someone, check. Report. Carrier pigeons and fast response shinobi have been dispatched. The Raikage should be en route. A Jonin shouted, veins bulging with effort as he maintained the jutsu. But this thing, its hide is too thick. Regular ninjutsu doesn't even leave a scratch. Damn it. Hold the line, no matter what. Tsuchidai gritted his teeth. He had never felt more powerless. Facing a tailed beast, shinobi felt like cannon fodder. Their attacks might as well have vanished into the void. Even elite jutsu could only delay its wrath for seconds. Ryo and Orochimaru stood atop a building that hadn't yet collapsed, observing the battlefield. Flames and red chakra flickered in their eyes. Orochimaru stood silently, arms folded, his pale figure bathed in shadow. What exactly did you put in that vial? Ryo finally asked, that could turn a tailed beast into such a pure engine of destruction. He recalled the liquid clearly. Nothing about it made logical sense. Orochimaru chuckled dryly, his throat letting out a rasp like a snake's hiss. Hey, it's simple. Tailed beasts hate those who cage them. Jinchuriki hate the curse placed on them. I just amplified that hatred a little. Then nudged the sealing technique along. He spread his hands, casual and elegant. All it takes is a spark. Ryo's eyes narrowed. In the end, he muttered only 2 words. Psychological bomb. In his mind, he'd flagged Orochimaru as a high-risk contaminant. But he had to admit, the bastard was effective. At that moment, the Eight-Tails form shifted again. Its crimson chakra condensed and hardened. In an instant, the outline snapped into shape. Scaled black skin. A massive skull. A single giant, blood-red eye filled with pure destruction. The most terrifying part was the vast buildup of energy in its mouth. A chilling silence took hold. The air around it vanished. Light warped inward. A dark, ominous sphere formed, growing rapidly. The tailed beast bomb. Looks like, Ryo said flatly, his voice colder than before, we should move back. He had no desire to be coated in fallout. Sure, Flying Thunder God could get him out, but cleanup was a pain. They didn't wait. The two vanished instantly, flickering like smoke into the shadows. After a few quick jumps, they landed on a distant, abandoned watchtower. From here, the crushing pressure of the bomb could still be felt, crawling down their spines. Roar. It was complete. The Eight-Tails launched the bomb, hurling the mountain-crushing sphere toward the center of the village. A shriek echoed in its wake. Every Kumo shinobi who saw it felt their blood run cold. It was over. This strike would wipe out half the village. Then, in that final second, a flash of lightning shattered the world. Like a divine spear ripping through space, it struck. Boom. Even louder than the tailed beast bomb, the sound was like a god hammering the sky. A thunderclap that flattened everything. The lightning beam struck the bomb directly and smashed the Eight-Tails' jaw in the same breath. The deadly sphere of energy wobbled like a bubble, shrank, then vanished in the blinding light. The Eight-Tails' massive head snapped upward. Its body was flung back like a ragdoll struck by an invisible giant. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The enormous beast gouged a deep trench across the village, destroying everything in its path. The lightning faded. A towering figure now stood at the heart of the battlefield. Muscles bulged beneath a dark combat uniform. White hair bristled like blades. His face was carved from stone. Blue lightning crackled around him like living serpents. The Sandaime Raikage had arrived. Raikage-sama. He's here. From the brink of despair, Kumo erupted in cheers. Relief washed over them like a flood. The Raikage stood immovable, scanning the battlefield and the wounded Eight-Tails with calm eyes. His voice cut through the noise. Tsuchidai. Begin rescue operations. Evacuate civilians. Find the cause of this. This is my responsibility. Far on the watchtower. Terrifying speed and taijutsu, Orochimaru murmured, eyes narrowing. His arms tensed. His unnaturally modified body froze for a second. Only Ryo noticed. It's time to go, Ryo said calmly. The main event was over. Staying would be foolish. If we linger, Anbu will track our trail from the impact. Getting caught would mean being hunted by an enraged Raikage and all of Kumo. Not worth the mess. He didn't mind a fight, but he hated pointless complications. Especially now. Orochimaru's smile faded. His expression turned cold. Ryo's judgment was accurate. The Raikage's strength had exceeded expectations. If they were discovered, the plot would collapse. Worse, Danzo would pin the blame on them for unauthorized actions. Even a mad scientist like Orochimaru knew when to pull out. Ryo's hand was already on Orochimaru's shoulder. Flying Thunder God technique. Like ink vanishing in water, the two disappeared the instant they stepped off the tower. To be continued. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on Pat if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally.